across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Well, look, it works. Welcome to the home of common sense. 3 minutes after 1 o'clock. There's an awful lot going on here this afternoon. And we learned today that over half of Brits now support a law forcing a general election whenever a governing party changes its leader mid-term. Pressure, of course, mounts on Labour to give the public a say following Starmer's resignation and Andy Burnham's coronation in waiting. We'll look at that in just a couple of moments. I've kind of changed my mind on this one as well. Also this afternoon, killers, rapists, sex offenders are set to be among up to 6,000 criminals released early from September as Justice Secretary David Lammy implements changes allowing serious offenders to walk free halfway through their sentence in a desperate bid to stop Britain's prisons running out of space. I don't even know where to start. We'll look at that too. And mental health benefit claimants are being coached by AI chatbots on how to maximise their PIP payouts with one tool called Pippin the Pip Benefit Support Worker. Are you Pippin? What have you got for me, love? The guidelines are there to allow users or teach users on how to claim up to 10k a year. Thank you, Pippin. Dear me. We're living in a strange old place, aren't we? Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. I have to tell you, it is not the hot weather that is making my normally impressive brain permanently exhausted. My hippocampus is currently in rehab. Nope, not the midday sunshine, but the state of our political stage and the politicians who perform on it. It's a clown show. Let me remind you, this sets the scene nicely. Only last week, Andy Burnham arrived into London and told reporters, confirmed to reporters, for all to hear, that he would be putting himself forward to be the Labour leader and therefore the Prime Minister. This is what the reporter said to Mr Burnham.
When Rishi Sunak did that and he became Prime Minister, you called for a general election. Would you be looking to do the same?
I think you're jumping several hurdles ahead there. My priority today is to become sworn in as the Mayor, as the MP for Makerfield.
You see, no, he's not jumping several hurdles. It's a perfectly legit question, a rare moment from the BBC, frankly. A completely legitimate question when our democracy is what we're talking about here. Not inflating your CV so you can get, I got the top job as Prime Minister, didn't have to do anything, just got handed it. That reasonably throws up a question. So much so that Andy Burnham himself had previously thrown up the same question. We should have a general election. The strongest arguments for holding a general election isn't about party politics, it's about legitimacy. Yes, Britain's constitution does allow the governing party to choose a new leader without automatically going back to the country, as they call it. We've seen it before. Gordon Brown succeeded Tony Blair without a general election. Theresa May replaced David Cameron. Boris Johnson replaced Theresa May. Liz Truss replaced Boris Johnson. Rishi Sunak then replaced Truss. All perfectly constitutional, but constitutional doesn't always mean democratically satisfying, and that is where we are at. Voters elected a Prime Minister with a particular manifesto, personality and leadership style. If that Prime Minister has now resigned, shouldn't the public get the chance to decide whether they still want that government at all? Yes is the answer. A leadership contest satisfies MPs, it satisfies party members, but it doesn't satisfy the public. At least one political party are calling for change.
We vote for somebody in a general election to be our Prime Minister. We expect them to serve their term. And barring ill health or exceptional circumstances, what is going on here, frankly, is reminiscent of a banana republic that has totally devalued the very process of general elections and democracy. We at Reform demand a general election.
I never used to agree with that. I used to think that the status quo was kind of about right. You know, you can't just have them. You are allowed to change your leader. You don't vote for the leader. You vote for the party, etc. And if the party feel they need... I'm done with that. I'm absolutely done with that. No longer works. News moves fast. Policy changes quickly. Personalities are forever on manoeuvres. If we are going to get a new leader, I think we should pick who it is. Many other, I get it, parliamentary democracies around the world allow governing parties to replace leaders mid-term without an election. Canada, Australia have done exactly that. Yet each time it sparks the same debate. Has the public really consented to this new Prime Minister? And it's that, isn't it? And I think because of the accelerated way this whole Burnham thing has happened, it's much different to some of the others that I mentioned, because it's happened all the way through the last 10 or 15 years. But this one is particularly poignant, given that the man wasn't an MP about 15 minutes ago. Now he is, and within 3 weeks of becoming an MP, he's likely to be the PM. If democracy is about consent, then surely the cleanest solution is obvious. Ask the voters, ask us. A fresh mandate removes questions over legitimacy, strengthens the new Prime Minister's authority and restores public confidence. So if politicians genuinely really do trust us, the people, why not let us, the people, decide? 0344 499 1000. I'm going to put this in the most obvious Route 1 way. Should there be a general election? And you may, because there are views out there from all parts of the spectrum that go, actually, no. Yesterday, that was me. And the more I thought about it, it sits all skew-if, this Burnham thing. There's something about it that isn't right. We need to have a law, a rule that says if you change the leader mid-term, halfway through, a year down the line, whatever, you change, you have an election. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word from Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster, regular with us on the programme. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. I don't know if anyone's mentioned it, but it is quite hot, but other than that, fine.
Is it? I hadn't, no, didn't get that. Sometimes there are bits of news once in a while you just kind of miss, and I think that's probably one of them. The last elections in Latvia I missed, and this is, I guess, a similar story. The hot weather. Didn't notice. Let's have a look at this, Steve. This is the Ipsos poll that shows 55% of Brits would support a law mandating an immediate general election whenever the governing party installs a new leader mid-term. And as I was saying a second ago, I used to think we can't really do that, you know, because we don't vote for... We're not America. We don't vote for a personality. We vote for a party. So, therefore... if that party needs to change its leader, so be it. But, let's be honest, we don't really. We vote for a personality.
Mm. Yeah, it's exactly the problem, isn't it? Here's my take on it, right? The people who say we shouldn't have an election are right. And the people who say we should have an election are right. And that's the mess we're in.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of the Constitution, the rules of it, you don't. But actually, morally, of course, the feel of it. But saying that we don't have a presidential system is ridiculous, because during an election, you go up to your average person, name 10 politicians. Of course not. You know the main one, the leaders' debate, because we have that structure to how our politics works now. So we need to either poop or get off the pot. You need a rule that means do or don't. There are downsides with both. If you have a rule that as soon as you change prime minister, you have to have an election, it means parties will cling on to terrible prime ministers. So they will definitely not want the election. They will willingly sit out the full 4 years with a Keir Starmer or whomever else of the last 5 we've had in the 3 weeks since. So there are pluses and things against it, but we just need to end this mess, because at the moment it's just bias, isn't it? Whenever there's a change of leader, the people who don't like that side of the political spectrum say there should be an election. The people who do like that side say they shouldn't. And it flips. There are tweets by Angela Rayner, and there's the question about Andy Burnham saying all of these politicians were so dumb. They didn't think, if I say there should be an election now, it'll probably come back and bite this party in the backside when it happens to us. How did they not see it coming? The political impact they had from that dumb tweet was near zero, but the cost of it is huge.
Absolutely. And, of course, the idea that, when we say, well, we vote for the party, so if you follow that to its one would assume, intended conclusion. It is that nothing would change. If Andy Burnham comes in, he's going to do exactly what Keir Starmer, more or less, certainly the manifesto bit. But, of course, it's not just that, because Andy Burnham can bring other policies. You know, you might have an obligation to carry out what's in the manifesto, but you can do more. You can't do less than's in the manifesto, but you can do more. So you can come in with other ideas. I also want to build a tunnel from Scunthorpe to Greenock. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's a lovely drive, but a tunnel would be quicker. You can do that as a Prime Minister. You can bring in all sorts of initiatives and ideas. So if you bring somebody else in, and Andy Burnham is talking about fundamental change he's talking about. Now, when somebody says, I'm going to bring fundamental change and deconstruct 40 years of our political system, I think that's worth a vote on that.
Yeah, and also, so the point of where you vote for the party, you've got the party, let the party sit it out, implies that there's no change available in the party, which means the Corbyn Labour Party is the same as the Blair Labour Party. What a stupid thing to think. And if there were no difference, say if changing the leader makes no difference, why have they just bothered? Like,
well, indeed.
If there's no impact from it, then you've just wasted yourself some stamps. You know what I mean? You could have just sat this one out.
Well, yeah, presumably those in the Labour Party that want change of a leader want change of a leader because they want something to change. So it's a curious situation. I mean, it ain't going to happen, but it's whether going forward, it's not going to happen this time, but whether, and there are some, as we discussed, some really legit arguments about saying, actually, that, you know, this is of such importance. And, you know, I get it. There's always going to be, I wrote a piece in a chapter in a book on this once about there's always going to be a percentage of people that think the government are a bit shit. I mean, that's always going to be the case. But that criticism and hatred of political parties that you don't support has been given booster rockets, sent to NASA, come back again, gone to Russia for more booster rockets, come back and have been taken to levels of visceral hatred that we've never seen before. We don't just say, I hate this party, they're rubbish. I mean, it's a real feeling, a territorial feeling in the gut that people have. So I understand that when you say to somebody who doesn't support the party in power, yeah, we demand a general election. I mean, you could say that any day of the week. I get that bit. But I think there are legit circumstances, like changing the leader, where they might be right.
Yeah, I think it might happen, though. I know maybe I'll be wrong, like I was wrong. People keep sending me the clip of me on TV saying Russia will never invade. I always love receiving that one, thanks.
I didn't know you said that, Steve.
Yeah. I was saying, when they were moving tanks around, this is just posturing. There's no way, come on, there's no way they would invade. Look what would happen. And obviously, I was thoroughly wrong. But so were they. They thought it was a 3-day thing. But back to this one. I think Andy Burnham might think the Burnham bounce might be the time to have an election. I know there's the spectre of Theresa May, the strong and stable, and obviously we know how that ended up. Yeah. But, you know, she still won. But I do think, given that he would have a better connection to his backbenchers, the Burnham bounce in the nation, he can get some points from not being Keir Starmer if you do it soon. And there's some good points worth cashing in. So I don't know. I think maybe we might have a general election coming.
You never know. Of course, we will break it here in case you don't hear about it. Much like the hot weather you were just alluding to, Steve. You'll miss nothing. Let's look at this story. Up to 6,000 criminals, including those convicted of manslaughter, rape, GBH and sex offences, are to be freed from September under changes being made by the Justice Secretary, David Lammy. They will now serve half their sentence instead of 2/3, and the reason, the government says, prisons are full. So this is not about some new kind of penal initiative where they've, you know, got the psychologists in to have a look at what makes old Smogger McGee on C-Ring tick. It's nothing like that. This is just about space. Simple as that. So the government says it's full. Let's just have a reminder, by the way, of what Keir Starmer said when the Tories did this.
Well, I am critical of the Tories' early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison.
Yeah. This is the way it works, Steve, isn't it? I mean, it's just a ridiculous. It just shows the ridiculousness of our system, and that's twice now in 10 minutes we've been able to show that quite succinctly. One with the, you know, I demand a general election until it's me that, you know, is the person in the story, Andy Burnham, and now there's Keir Starmer. The Tories are wrecking the fabric of the justice system of this country, and there they are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with the way our politics works, that it is about trying to win points through sound bites. The government have done something, I need to criticise it without thinking of the long-term plan, because this is the problem with our politics. No one cares about the long-term plan. They all just want to get in at the next election and then just fight fires and panic until the next election, or until 2 years later when they have to quit. This is such a mess, isn't it? Because we've been sat here talking about the fact that we've had overcrowding. So do something about it. Fix the underlying problem then. I could get you 12,000 spaces. Isn't it 12,000 the number of people waiting to be deported, foreign criminals?
Yep.
So that's got to be some handy spaces. And then I don't know why they don't build some more. Up the road from me, they've managed to knock up loads of new builds in about what seems about 3.5 days. It was a field the last time I remembered. They can knock up some houses. Obviously, they're shaking. You can hear the neighbours, but I don't think we'd mind if prisoners can hear the neighbours. Do you know what I mean? We could actually do some infrastructure building, and we've had some run-up on this one, because we could find a clip from us just over a year ago definitely talking about the same. So they could have done a year's worth of building, and yet they don't. They just sit and wait. Oh, we've freed up some space, and now we do nothing until it's full again. How did they not see it coming?
I've never been able to quite work out how, for example, the Chinese, who can... I never forget there was an incident a few years ago where there'd been a terrible crash on a motorway and an entire viaduct had been smashed to smithereens, obliterating not just the road above it, but everything below it, the arterial system that existed from it, this sort of octopus of roads. And it happened like 10:30 on a Friday evening. It was carnage for what appeared to be miles around. 5:45 the next evening, fixed, built, back up and running. You'd never know anything had happened. I don't know what they used. Balsa wood, paper mache. This thing was just repaired. Unbelievable. The point is, of course, I also refuse to believe, Steve, you just mentioned the houses that can go up. It cannot be beyond the wit of mankind in the 21st century to build a big prison.
Yeah, and we had... whatever the date was, we first started talking about it. That first release scheme, we've had that long to do it. So they don't even need to be as good as the Chinese. They could have ordered a prison on Temu. It could have been delivered by now. I know the delivery's a bit of a wait if you're using those Chinese apps. That way we would have outsourced all of our carbon to them, as if that makes a difference as well. Do you know what I mean? There's definitely a solution that could have happened instead of sitting around and waiting for the problem to happen again and just doing this same sticking plaster thing. And it would be okay if the sticking plaster were, let's release some shoplifters, some criminals, bad drivers, tax evaders. I don't like them, but if there were more of those on the streets, all right, we'd sit here and we'd moan about it. But the headline wouldn't be killers and rapists released. The stupidity, of course, of when we debate this stuff, Keir Starmer saying the Tories have lost it, and now the Tories saying Labour have lost it. I mean, the idea that David Lammy went home one night from work and said, darling, before we have dinner, I've just got to come up with an initiative for early release. I've got my moleskin out, and I'm just going to pen in some ideas. Got a few rapists on there, a couple of offenders, some violent thugs. I want to release them halfway through their sentence. David Lammy did not come up with this. The previous Tory Justice Secretary did not come up with this. Some very senior civil servants go to people like Lammy and go, right, you've got 3 options here. They're all flipping bad. The optics are awful for all of them. Pick one of them, because you're going to have to. And it's that simple. Yeah, it's a yes minister style scene, isn't it, where some civil servant gives him options and he picks the one that is less damaging to him. And that's the flaw in our politics. Yeah, indeed. Steve, stay with us. Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster with us. More stories still to come. We will talk about tech giants, plans to force tech giants to boost what it calls trusted news. I love this story. That's on the way, and more from you. Early release calls on that, 0344 499 1000. And should there be a general election? I know it's a very simple question, crudely put, but you take the point. The more you think about it, the Burnham coronation, as we get closer to this man that wasn't even in Westminster. This time last week, he just arrived, and in 3 weeks' time, he's going to be the Prime Minister. Should there be an election? Lines are open. This is Talk.
only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she's going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
At 23 minutes after 1 o'clock, Steve Allen is with us. I just want to bring you this story as well, Steve, just to let everybody see this curious contrast of policing. The killer of student Henry Novak was never handcuffed. Now, that, of course, became a fairly prevalent line on this. How was one person treated that way? This is after they thought the guy was a victim. So there's newly released video to show this. The body-worn video from the night Mr. Novak's death exposes the lies told by Vikram Digwar. This is the man that had been said he'd been the victim of a racial attack, leading police officers to handcuff the university student as he lay dying. Now, this backs an assertion by Mr. Novak's family that Digwar was never handcuffed. The contrast in the men's treatment by Hampshire police was described by the family as unbearable. We know that Digwar was eventually jailed for life. Let's have a look at this newly released footage.
You've got your side of the story, mate. We don't know what's going on here, OK? So we need to find out, OK? Yeah, I've gone 9 for attempt murder with the gentleman that I've run through. Have we got a van at all that I can get him down to Central? Yes. OK, and we'll get it all sorted, all right? I'm not saying you've done anything, mate, but we need to find out what's happened, OK?
Yeah, very, very polite, Steve, isn't it? A man who was just about to take you down the station for attempted murder. But don't worry, sunshine, you know, everything's fine, everything's tickety-boo. And, of course, we know what was happening just 10 feet away from that moment. Yeah, it's sickening, isn't it? I mean, at the start of the clip, I think he calls him sir, whereas we know the victim gets a sarcastic mate in the I don't think you have, mate. It's the treatment's ridiculous. The mindset, and I'm still at that stage of trying to work out where the problem comes from, where in the education, the training or something. So eventually you can start to have some sympathy for a police force that might have had years of this now, of being trained and trained again. And the hoodwinking con that is unconscious bias training, the thing that effectively says you think a thing and you don't think you think it, but if you say you don't think it, that's proof you think it. Give me some money for that training course, please. That kind of nonsense that has made its way into the culture is the problem here, isn't it? The fact that you are arresting someone for potentially murdering someone, calling them sir, meanwhile someone's being handcuffed whilst having been stabbed. And some of the stuff we heard a few days ago, the method of the pulling the arms back and remaining cuffed, doing CPR on a wound, all of that stuff. When it first happened, we were told, oh, the coroner said it wouldn't have made a difference. I'm starting to not fully, I don't know how legally I can say how much I believe that or not, but feels like one thing the police could have done is take a sentence like I've been stabbed seriously and not do CPR on a stab wound. And you know what? That will mean some people who haven't been stabbed will erroneously claim it. Oh, well, that'll be annoying, but you'll be saving lives. Indeed. Let's move to this story, Steve. Labour has published plans to force tech giants to boost what it calls trusted news sources, with critics warning it is biased by design and raises serious questions about who gets to decide what is trustworthy. It reminded me of something Alistair Campbell said on his own podcast. Very rarely I will concur with Mr. Campbell, but on this, he might have had a point. Have a listen.
Because of the nature of our politics, the quality, if you like, of our politicians and the political gene pool, the nihilism of much of the mainstream media, the anarchy of social media, with dissonance, hypocrisy, short-termism, naivety, industrialised rage and willful ignorance off the scale, that we're becoming almost ungovernable.
We are becoming almost ungovernable. Now, of course, there's lots of people on social media, this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, Steve, who call themselves journalists. They're not. They call themselves bastions of truth because they used to be, I don't know, an MP or something like that. They're not. And there's a lot of that out there. Now, there's a little bit of me that is kind of all right with that. I'm all right with that because it's a democracy and people can have an opinion. But when it is sort of relayed as either fact or tacitly relayed as fact, that's when we have a bit of a problem. Every day I get people saying, why are you not talking about this? And they send me a link to Andrew Bridgen telling me that Zelensky is dead. And I think, now let me think, what's the answer? Why are we not talking about that? Hang on. Oh, yeah, because it's not true. That's why we're not talking about it. So there's all of that to contend with. However, I can see why people will lose their minds on this if tech bosses are told, only show the BBC, do not show anyone else, because they're all lying.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that you will get more truth by having less information is shocking. Because the thing is, if someone's wrong on the internet, especially on X, right, someone will post something or link to something that's not true, well, then you can post under it. You can say that's not true. There'll be a comment section. What do they call it? The community notes or whatever it is on X. So more information can eventually get rid of some truth. Now, I know there's the problem, the fact that truth can be a stickier message. Malcolm Gladwell's thing about the tipping point, right? That you'll get a fact, a false fact. This lie will be so enjoyable that it spreads around. Right? But you can deal with that. You can't deal with that by only letting people read the BBC website. It seems thoroughly ridiculous, doesn't it? Like, this is what I don't get about it. If you're the Labour government and you think let's bring in some laws, which means the BBC, we can control what media people see. What do you think's going to happen when that law gets used by the next government that's not you? You fools! This is not about left-right bias. This is about bias in general. Because whatever powers you give yourself now will be the powers the people who wish to shut you up in the future have.
It's kind of interesting, and it depends, it always depends, doesn't it, on where your politics are. I was looking at something the other day, and I won't mention who the individuals are involved, but it was a woman, again, somebody who would sort of purport to be a sort of slight politician, campaigner, journalist, that kind of thing. And she was trying to cover some kind of story. So what she decided to do was to literally walk into the Royal Courts of Justice and start, with a microphone, and start interviewing, like, witnesses in court cases. And, now, of course, you can't do that. There's really good reasons why you can't do that. But, of course, all her fans were going, yeah, brilliant, well done, girl. Well done, you did good. You don't get that on the BBC, do you? And I'm thinking, there's a reason you don't get that on the... Well, forget the BBC. Here on Talk, anywhere else, you wouldn't get that, because that's not how it works. You can prejudice a court case. You could collapse a court case. Do we want a decent, refined, intelligent system of justice where we keep juries and stuff like that? Remember those arguments? Or do we just want to allow anyone with a camera phone to call themselves a journalist?
Yeah, I mean, politics has changed.
By the way, camera phone is a very old-fashioned phrase, isn't it? I don't think anyone ever went into the Apple store and said, have you got a phone without a camera, please? I don't think they do one.
Yes, I know you try and barge into the courts with your camcorder, and people can't really, they don't really know what that is.
It's this big.
It's the guy with the big boom mic that comes in after you. He's the one who causes the trouble. Yep. Yeah, you're right. What you've got there is the fact that politics now is specifically designed. People have worked out politics works better when you connect to emotion rather than the part of the brain that does fact and thinking and processing. The cognitive part versus the emotional part. And yeah, maybe, not that it's not a blaming of Brexit, but we got really good at politics during Brexit. We worked out how to motivate people and connect to the bit that really hurts. This is why people are so angry about politics, rather than back in the 70s and 80s where people had their pipes and they thought things about politics. People now feel things about politics, and that's the problem. Social media comes and finds a great way to lubricate the system that shares those emotions, which moves us further away from facts.
It does, and I don't know how we put it back in the bottle. I wish there was kind of sort of a magic pill that you could take, a sort of a Huxley-esque pill that would just simply provide something like, oh, that's true, that's not true, and you'd know instantly. Go, right, that's opinion, that's genuine news, and it's not slanted news, it's genuine news. We live in hope. Steve, thank you as ever. Enjoy the sunshine. Apparently it's still out. So have a good afternoon and enjoy the weekend. Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster. There's a lot to get into there, particularly that bit about news. I mean, always intrigued where people get their news from. I've always said, you should get your news from one source. But that comes with some obvious caveats as to who the sources are. I mean, you want somebody with a little bit of qualification in the game, in the same way that you wouldn't just employ a plumber because they said on social media, I'm quite good with taps. We're going to take a short pause, back with you. Oh, and should there be a general election? Thoughts on that one as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Sarah in Morden. Says, I don't think a general election is the best idea, to be honest. They'd never change leader, and we'd be stuck with Starmer for another 3 years. Maybe a general election within 6 or 9 months will give a bit of balance. Well, this is what this debate is all about. It's sort of exploring those areas. Sarah says, I'd rather it was law that up to 5 nominated manifesto pledges have to be delivered within 1 or 2 years of a general election. Anything major, like EU resets or digital ID, for example, need to go to a referendum if they're not one of those pledges or are significantly different to the manifesto pledge. Yeah, I think digital ID, which is not, I think I'm right in saying it's not in the Labour, wasn't in the Labour manifesto, but that's a seismic bit of legislation, of course. If they don't deliver, we get a general election. That would stop the lies to get votes. We can't keep being conned like this and call it democracy. We also need to security vet MPs. Parliament is open to terrorists without it. Interesting. Well, let's speak to a politician. Lord Simon Hart, former Conservative MP, joins us now. Simon, good afternoon to you.
Hello, hi.
We're all an armchair Prime Minister, right? I mean, or an armchair Chancellor. We're an armchair. We've all got a view of how it could be done better. I know, when you get into government, you get into those areas, then I'm sure it's trickier than it looks from the outside.
Yeah, it probably does. But I think MPs probably all are much the same. They think they can do it better too. That's why there's always competition for the role. That's why there's always talk of leadership bids and all that sort of stuff. Because, like in any team, there are people who think, yeah, I could do that a little bit better.
Yeah. I guess...
But you're right, though. It is, until they do it. And then it turns out it's not quite so simple as everybody thought.
Yeah, because there's always those, everybody, I'm sure every Prime Minister... There was a story, wasn't there? I've told this many times. When Tony Blair became Prime Minister, he walked into I think it was the Education Department, Permanent Secretary of the Education Department, and said, Prime Minister, what is it you want to do? And he said, I've got this, hang on a second, he pulled out this list and went, that's what I want to do. And the Permanent Secretary looked at it and went, yeah, we can do that. Blair says, how long will it take? He said, based on what you're looking for, about 22 years or something of that nature. It was just like completely unrealistic. So the to-do list sort of goes in the shredder rather quickly.
Well, part of the problem, and I think one of your listeners touched on it just now, was the fact that everything is so short term now that it's very tempting. It's huge pressure on politicians to make promises, make these, and the promise comes, you know, like this. It doesn't matter what your problem is, we can fix it. We can fix it quickly, and we can fix it free of charge. And of course, once you set yourself up like that, you know, you're a hostage to fortune. It's going to go wrong quite quickly. But people feel that they have to say that because that's, you know, there's sort of social media chewing at your heels. Everybody's trying to outbid each other in terms of their, you know, the attractiveness of their offer. But it comes back to bite you because some of this stuff is tough and takes a long time and it's very expensive. And you have to make choices and trade-offs and people seem increasingly impatient with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I mean, there's a couple of social media related stories to news around at the moment, Simon, but certainly as a more general view, social media is not, of course, you know, it's not something most people, if you went across the country, are actively engaged in. People have either got a Facebook page, Instagram, whatever it happens to be, depending on your age sometimes. But the noise from social media is very loud these days. It's very loud. It's sometimes violent. It's sometimes threatening. And I think it does change the debate somewhat in terms of our political appetites and needs and desires.
It does, and it shouldn't, and we're all guilty of it. And it used to, you know, deeply frustrating. I used to say to people occasionally, if social media was an actual thing, you know, Jeremy Corbyn would still be Prime Minister. You know, it's not necessarily a proportionate look at what's really going on. And yet we do allow ourselves just to look at those comments at the bottom of a story or to get sucked into the noise. And it doesn't lend itself to good decision-making. You know, good decision-making has got to be objective. You've got to sort of put a cold towel over your head and you've got to drown out all the other noises and just take decisions based on evidence. It might take some time, it might be unpopular, but it's, you use that cliche in politics, but you've got to weigh up, you know, what's the right thing to do. I mean, you know, personally, speaking from my point of view, I'm quite keen for the government to ban social media for people like me. But forget the under-16s. I think I should be prevented from reading this stuff because it does. It just makes you doubt your own judgment.
Well, it's interesting because I was just as we were talking on this, Simon. I know we're slightly departing from the general election question, but we'll come back to that because it is all sort of connected. Matt Dathan is a Home Affairs editor at The Times, has just sort of uncovered or reposted a tweet from Mike Tapp, the Labour MP who's found himself in a little bit of hot water. Who says, thanks, the attempted intimidation is quite a sight. I've seen off the Taliban and taken out terrorists. Country first, always. And Matt makes this point, now deleted, but Mike Tapp earlier suggested that fighting off the Home Secretary, his boss, is nothing given his experience in the army. So what we have here is a couple of different things. One is that it's interesting, it's not particularly parliamentary language that is being used here, but just interesting how an argument which, you know, half an hour ago would have happened in the corridors of Westminster, the privacy of the Home Office, a quiet tete-a-tete between Minister and Home Secretary, now is played out for all to see on a social media post. He's deleted that. Mike Tapp's deleted that post, by the way, but nonetheless, it's there.
Yeah, but somebody would have, you know, said that will be saved somewhere forever and will be trotted out every time this guy's name comes out. But this is the problem. You know, in the old days, if you might go to the pub after work with a few mates and complain about your boss, and that'd be about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'd go home and you'd calm down by the next day and everything would have been fine again. Now it's sort of done differently. You know, I got in trouble on Twitter years ago by sort of allowing my sort of frustration on a certain moment to end up on Twitter, as it was. And, you know, that gets repeated to me, you know, quite frequently. But actually, it would have been much better, you know, this business of thinking that what you're writing or what you're saying on social media is somehow anonymous or somehow harmless or somehow temporary is hugely misleading. And yet, as I say, we sort of keep falling into the same trap. At least I do.
Yes, it's kind of weird, and I suppose, you know, in one respect, because there's this story about whether, you know, Twitter and the like should be profiling some of the kind of people who purport to be, you know, citizen journalists, which is really just another way of saying not a journalist. But nonetheless, I don't suggest that people are not allowed to go out and do their own reports, but they would be sort of polemics rather than objective news reporting. And that's fine as well. There's a place for all of that. And then, of course, you get into the legalities of things. I mean, people will break libel laws all over social media. They don't really care. And once in a while, I've warned people and said, you might want to take that down, mate, because, you know, they might sue you for quite a lot of money. You can't just call the fella down the road a paedophile or suggest that, you know, this person is an armed robber or something. But it doesn't translate like that. It's just a Wild West. Say what you like.
Totally. And I you know, and facts matter. A lot. You know, there are significant consequences. People can't just make stuff up or repeat things that they might have heard, you know, might have heard in the pub as if they're the truth. And you know, and yet if you say that, people also tend to turn around these days and sort of accuse you of trying to constrain their free speech. No, free speech doesn't give you permission to say what you like about anybody, irrespective of whether it's true or not. Free speech comes with responsibilities. It comes with the obligation that what you say is actually based on fact. I think it was Sally Burko.
Wow, I'd forgotten all about Sally Burko.
Well, I think Sally Burko, John Burko, former Speaker of the House of Commons wife, said something, a sort of throwaway line on social media, and got about another person and didn't even name the person, but by implication, I think, got into very deep and troublesome waters.
That's right. I remember.
Every so often, I think everybody should just take a deep breath and hang on a minute. You know, there might be somebody out there who's going to not just brush this off. They're going to come after me through the courts, and it could be very time-consuming and very expensive. Or, you know, people have lost their jobs. People have said something, and, you know, it's been reported to their company or their organisation the next couple of days, and they've been you know, look, in politics, there's people mining social media comments going back years and years and years, and people's political careers have come to an end as a result.
Absolutely. And the reason this is important to the other question in this respect, Simon, is because the noise, the sheer, the amphitheatre-style vitriol, the polarity, the divisions is like, you know, these are not arguments that once upon a time were just about your political opponent. These people are now your enemy. You know, you'd sleep better at night if they were dead, and if that death happened slowly, then so be it. So we're in this place, this ferocious place, and so things like people calling for a general election because we've changed a leader, those arguments, which I never concurred with up until about today, I think, when I suddenly thought, actually, maybe we should have a general election. Maybe it's a good idea. But the noise around it, the levels of absolute surety on this, because you don't support the party of the day. If it's the party you do support, then you're fine with everything. Everything's tickety-boo. But if it's the one you don't like, you know, these people are essentially a heady combo of Chairman Mao, Adolf Hitler, and that fella from Cambodia.
Well, and I think people are asking themselves this week, aren't they? Or we're all sort of talking about it within the Westminster Village and maybe a little bit beyond, about how the hell have we managed to get through 7 prime ministers in 9 years or whatever the number is. One of the reasons is because of this ferocious background noise which accompanies every decision, every comment, every thought, every proposal, every photograph. And this is making governing impossible. It's making it impossible whichever party. And I'm of the view that poor old Andy Burnham, if it is to become him, is going to hit exactly the same sort of hurricane force winds any day now as all of his predecessors. And it's, you know, you can't run a country when you change the leader every 5 minutes. Just you get bored of them. They don't do exactly what they said they were going to do instantly. So, oh well, you're useless. You're just as bad as the rest. Get rid of you. Who's next? Who's next?
But I suppose, sorry to interject, Simon, I was going to say, the Burnham example, because we were talking earlier about the various examples from Gordon Brown taking over from Tony Blair, Theresa May replacing David Cameron, Boris Johnson replacing Theresa May, Liz Truss replacing Boris Johnson, all of this. But actually, the Burnham example is far more poignant, I think, in the sense that this man literally was not even a member of Parliament 25 minutes ago, and in 3 weeks' time he's going to be the Prime Minister. Now, that may well be our system. It's the one we've got. It's the only one we've got. But that looks like a system that needs some attention.
Well, it was Winston Churchill who said it's a rubbish system, but nobody's invented a better one. And it may be that now is the moment to invent a better one. But I think that, for me, as long as the process is, you can point to the democratic integrity of it, that is a big, that's a major sort of checkpoint, really. I just worry about the fact that even if you go through all of the processes which everybody would agree, and you've vote after vote after vote, and the person you end up with is the person that you thought you were going to end up with, which you could argue was the case with Keir Starmer. The fact is that what the hell went wrong subsequently? Can't everyone just say, well, I didn't like him, or he turned out to be a bit of a disappointment, or what? The fact something's driving that. He was churning his way through, he might not be the most exciting man in the world, but he was churning his way through his legislative programme. He was delivering bits and pieces of his manifesto. There was distractions off, but he was doing all that. So, and yet still we've said, no, absolutely. We're not even writing. We didn't even just think of him as mildly unpopular. We went from love to hate, and with almost nothing in between.
Yes, despite the fact that I never had the love bit on that journey with Starmer, but and I know you didn't either. But I know the point you're making. Because I looked at it, I thought, if I was a Labour person, what would I be thinking now? And I think I'd be scratching my head going, well, I'm not absolutely sure what he actually did. Because the last time I looked, we put this fella in there and he was working his way merrily through the manifesto. I don't think he was doing a particularly good job, but, I'm a Labour person and therefore I support him. And, it seemed to be based on, as you rightly alluded to there, Simon, the kind of mood music, the backdrop, the cacophony of sound from areas like social media. Simon, we have to stop there. It's been an absolute delight having you on. Let's speak again. Lord Simon Hart, former Conservative MP, former Chief Whip under Rishi Sunak as well. Thank you to him. Should there be a general election? What do you feel about that? 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on social media and what passes for legit or reliable news? Lines are open there as well. This is Talk.
Only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she is going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Scott down in London on that issue of Burnham. And should there be a general election? Scott, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, Ian. So basically, Andy Burnham's has been out of government for well over a decade now. Labour was elected a couple of years ago under Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's Labour Party had a manifesto. Andy Burnham wasn't a part of the parliamentary PLP.
Correct.
So he has no mandate if he's coronated as the next PM. He has no standing with the public. He has no business making any sort of policy changes because none of these things he wasn't voted in for any of these things. And quite frankly, it's a clear detachment, but once again, between those in government and the public. We're being completely being treated with disdain. And it's as if anything we say truly doesn't matter.
It's also, I mean, you put it brilliantly, Scott, because we kind of work in perceptions, don't we, rather than reality. So some people had a perception that Keir Starmer was rubbish. I mean, if I was a Labour supporter, I'd probably been all right with Keir Starmer. I think he was broadly doing what you expect of Labour. I mean, there were some odd things, winter fuel allowance and stuff, but even that, there was a lot of Labour supporters. Well, it's only from the richer people. They had their answers to it. I don't know why you would think it was OK to bring another bloke in because you thought he's a bit easier on the eye and can speak with a northern accent. I mean, that's where we're at.
Well, this is the thing. It's like I saw someone say the other day that they've got 403 MPs before Andy Burnham came back as one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you couldn't find someone like that. One person. Yeah. MPs, couldn't find one person. And it's the same thing again for any other position. Correct. We're literally going to be going back to the same thing with. It's obvious who he's planning on bringing back. Jess Phillips and co, who quite frankly was already pushed out for let's be real about it. Her once again, showing disdain for the public by taking absolute liberties when it comes to taxes and expenses. And I'm now at the point where how are we supposed to trust government? It doesn't matter what the party is, but how are we supposed to trust government going forward if no matter what we say or no matter how the public feels, they will still go about their business doing whatever the hell they please and just look at us and be like, well, we told you this is how it's going to be anyway.
So do you think, based on all of this, Scott, well, you would rather, I'm assuming you're not a Starmer supporter, but you think in terms of our democracy, we should have kept Keir Starmer in, or Keir Starmer should remain in place?
See, for me, Keir Starmer had to go because he had to go purely because he once again he was doing the exact opposite of what he ran on. He said he'd stop the boats. Boats haven't stopped.
Yep.
He said that we'd start sending people back. That's not happened. We're going to shut down the migrant hotels. That hasn't really happened. Well, it has, but it's extremely slow. It's like policy after policy is either being reneged or we're just going to gloss over the fact that we've done the bare minimum.
And it's also the classic over-promising and under-delivering, so you get this massive chasm between the two. Listen, Scott, I've got to move. You've been great. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000 on that issue of the general election. Let's get a voice note from Nigel.
Afternoon, Ian. It's Nigel from Brighton. I actually predict that Andy Burnham will call a snap general election, and he'll do it very quickly. And here's why. Burnham will never be more popular than he is right now. He's reached this position without announcing a single costed policy. It's all platitudes. He's going to drive change. He's going to look after the farmers. He's going to look after the pensioners. He's going to look after everybody. and not one broadcaster has been allowed near him other than the BBC, and they won't ask how he's going to pay for any of this. So whilst this illusion holds, I think the maths work for him. The right vote is still split between Reform, Reclaim and the Tories, and the BBC spent weeks damaging Reform on the lead up to the election with their question time to stitch up on the Reform candidate, and how they twisted Farage's white cold rage line. So put a media honeymoon on top of a split right vote, and I think he just gets it across the line. Anyway, that's my prediction. It's Nigel from Brighton here.
Great voice note, Nigel. Thank you very much indeed. You want to drop us a voice? Do you know what? While the weather's a bit like this, and it's a bit nutty out there, isn't it? I think today's the last really hot day, but this morning, all I know is at 7 a.m. it was 20... What was it, Finn? 27 degrees at 7 a.m. this morning. That's just weird. Doesn't normally do that, even if it gets to 27 degrees later. So I think it's going to calm down a bit, and we're back to normal. It's summer, hooray! Mid-20s next week. Bring it on. But anyway, my point was, if you're suffering a bit in the heat and you think, I can't hang on the phone, I can't monkey around making a call, don't know when I'm going to be free, a voice note is often the best way to do it. This tech did not exist a couple of years back, so any views you have on any of the subjects, where you get your news from, should there be a general election, you can voice note us on 0344 499 1000. That's also the same number you can call us on too. This one from Elliot. I don't understand the theory. If the change of Prime Minister is no different, hence why the change, because Keir was garbage and dangerous, really bad at his job. He has to know that therefore shouldn't be allowed to stay. I don't quite understand that. Any other job, you'd just be sacked. I despair, says Elliot in broken English. Thank you for that, Elliot. Loads more still to come. 0344 499 1000. You can message us, of course, on 87222. Should there be a general election? Social media and news, and anything else you've heard along the way as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. 3 minutes, or coming up on 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. We've got loads to get through at this end. Over half of Brits now support a law enforcing a general election whenever a governing party changes leader mid-term, as pressure mounts on Labour to give the public a say following Starmer's resignation and Burnham's coronation in waiting. Should there be one? I know it's an obvious bit route one-y of a question, but it's absolutely relative and relevant to everything that's going on right now. And of course, you know, Andy Burnham is the man himself who suggested that under these very conditions there should be a general election. Also this afternoon, killers, rapists, sex offenders are set to be among 6,000 criminals to be released early from September as Justice Secretary David Lammy implements changes allowing serious offenders to walk free halfway through their sentence in a desperate bid to stop Britain's prisons running out of space. I mean, if that's the only way you can facilitate things by, well, we've got a bit cramped over there on C Wing, well, just let some people out. Yeah. That, you see, slightly goes against the spirit of the place they're in. Oh, yes, prison, incarceration, you know the thing. And mental health benefit claimants are being coached by an AI chatbot on how to maximise their PIP payments. One of these tools is actually called Pippin the PIP Benefit Support Worker, guiding users on how to claim up to 10k a year. Ka-ching. Nice if you can get it. Lots to get through. 0344 499 1000. This in from Ben. Regarding a general election, the best option is a compulsory leadership election with TV debates with the Andrew Neils of this world, so the nation would know all about a potential new leader. Manifesto needs to be adhered to, or a general election must be called. But, of course, it's what else you can do in addition to the manifesto that will sometimes mark out a leader or a party. And I'm thinking of digital ID in particular, which wasn't in the... I think I'm right in saying this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't in the Labour manifesto. It's such a massive piece of legislation. And, by the way, that would have happened under a Tory government, because you know, you've got to be so far down the line already on an initiative like digital ID to say, yeah, we're going to do that next couple of years. I mean, the infrastructure has to be, you don't start that from scratch. If you were trying to start something so big as that from scratch, you'd be talking about, you know, 10, 15-year plan. So you can add to things. But I do think when you have something as big as this, as big as changing a leader, the arguments to have a general election are pretty powerful. Even though I would have deserted them at a moment's questioning, to me that wasn't how you do it. We vote for parties, not individuals. We're not the American system. But, you know, the more I think about it, the more it seems to me now that maybe a general election is the right way forward. Let me bring to your attention as well that the man who assaulted 2 female police officers and a member of the public during a violent attack at Manchester Airport is being sentenced today. This is Mohammed Fahir Amaz, 21, found guilty of attacking armed cop PC Ellie Cook and an unarmed officer, PC Lydia Ward, back in, we all remember this, July 23rd, 2024. The incident happened after Amaz and his older brother, Mohammed, who's 26, picked up their mother from a flight. Amaz headbutted a man after confronting him at a Starbucks in the terminal. The sentence for Amaz is due to start at 2:15. So, around about 10 minutes' time, we are likely to get the results of that sentencing and bring it to you here first. It was a really convoluted court case. I know you see the video and everyone saw the video, and this is, again, where the whole social media thing is not always that helpful. Could the jury not work this out? You've only got to look at the video. But sometimes that's not the only question the jury is being asked. And there was all sorts of counter-arguments, self-defence, and, you know, who threw the first punch, and was that punch intended? Was it too hard for self-defence? Was it... You have this lot thrown at 12 men and women sitting on a jury. It's not a straight case of going, did that man hit that man? Because you look at it and go, well, yeah, of course he did. Fine. If that was the case, everybody would be found guilty. But then there's the nuance, and then there's the other defences that will go alongside it, both individual and legal, etc. However, out of this, there did come a guilty verdict, a very serious offence as well of attacking 2 police officers on that day. So we'll wait and see what the details are when we get that result. Sentencing starts in about 10 minutes. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, up to 6,000 criminals, including those convicted of manslaughter, rape, GBH, sex offences, are to be freed from September under changes being made by Justice Secretary David Lammy. They'll now serve half of their sentence instead of 2/3. Didn't it used to be that once upon a time, and then they kind of moved it to 2/3 because everyone thought half's a bit weird, isn't it? Like half, 50, something very totemically disturbing about you're going to get 10 years. Actually, Gov, it's only 5. I mean, that was a bit weird. So they changed it. Now it's sort of gone back. The reason is apparently the government says that prisons are full. Let's just have a reminder, though, of what Keir Starmer said when the Conservative Party did this.
Well, I am critical of the Tories early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison.
Yeah, prison to prison. That's what he said in opposition. Funny how you change when you're in the big gig. Let's speak with Sam Samsworth. We've spoken to Sam before, former prison officer, host of the Real Porridge podcast. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good, mate. How are you, Ian?
Yeah, good as gold. Now, you know this terrain. You know what Sea Wing looks like on a crowded day, so you'll have a very different understanding to the one I've got. And my one is the sort of tax-paying, human, instinctive view that if you do something terrible and someone says it's 10 years, you should serve, well, certainly most of that time. I understand the incentive thing, but certainly most of it, not half of it.
But quite definitely, mate. Listen, Ian, it's about risk to the public for me.
Yep.
So anyone who's in for any sort of violence, anyone who's in for any sort of sex offence, that's exposing yourself to more serious stuff, quite definitely will always remain those sort of people a risk to the public, and they shouldn't be getting out early at all. Yep. If you look now, for me, it'd be dead easy. Anyone with less than 12 months, bam, they're out. Let's look how many we've got. I'll bet you there's at least 6,000 people with less than 12 months. No risk to the public. I've got another one for you. How about all the people who are in for social media, making comments?
Yep.
Are they a risk to the public? Yep. I would argue they're not. I would argue maybe the establishment see them as a risk, but not the public. So for me, it's outrageous, Ian. And
I completely agree. I mean, the social media thing, I can completely disagree. Look, I've seen people write stuff, and I just think I'm never offended by stuff, Sam, but I just think you're a half-wit or an idiot. But the last time I looked, being an idiot isn't a criminal offence, and certainly even if it was a criminal offence, it's not one that serves anyone by sending you to jail. It's ridiculous.
Well, again, they're in jail, aren't they, because of the threat? They were remanded into custody.
Yeah.
That was a threat. Kangaroo courts. You know, people, they were treated unfairly. If they say to me, we're going to remand you into custody for 2 years before you go to trial, or you plead guilty, no, it's out of order, mate. But anyone who is a sex offender of any sort, the other side of it, Ian, is the probation service, like the prison service, is absolutely flat. They're losing people as soon as they recruit. There's a lot of new people. They can't manage the population, the workload they've already got. 6,000 more people, half of them are risk to the public. They can't monitor them, mate. Yeah. They absolutely cannot.
And it's only when, like us having this conversation, Sam, I just think, I mean, you said it early doors, right, in this conversation, that I mean, there's loads of... you could go through so many offences before you got to rapists, right? I mean, surely anyone with half a brain would go, right, the people that are never coming out until they've served their sentence will be the rapists and those convicted of the most heinous and violent crimes, manslaughter, that kind of thing. They will serve whatever sentence the judge gave them. But we've got a shed load of other people down here, you know, got some white-collar boys. They thought they could trouser a few quid while working in the accountancy department. They're not my ideal next-door neighbours, but I don't think they're going to be any harm to anybody. If you stick a tag and a curfew on them, that's a better way to spend public money. Should there be the people you'd go for?
Ian, you hit the nail on the head, mate. Anyone with half a brain, it's about common sense, mate.
Yeah.
And this government seem incapable of applying any common sense. Anyway, here's the thing. We need more prison spaces, don't we? Letting people out early is not a solution.
No.
This country, they're too expensive to build and they're way behind. They cannot keep up with the crime wave, the current crime wave. So do you know what? How about Rwanda? Remember that name, Rwanda?
Yeah.
Played a part, yeah. So how about we build 3 prisons in Rwanda, and any foreign nationals, asylum seekers in our prisons, that's where they're going. They go from court, they go straight there.
Yeah.
Cheaper to build, boost Rwanda's economy. There's plenty of ex-prison officers that'd be happy to go, show the populace, you know, what the job is, how to manage prisoners and the like, and then maybe look at elsewhere, you know, where we've got a big population of prisoners, maybe one in Pakistan, Somalia, etc., mate. Cheaper to build, let's boost foreign economies.
That's a great point. I've never thought of it that way, because, I mean, people talk about Rwanda in terms of just immigration, but there must be other options there. I mean, personally, I've always thought that, you know, the idea that you can't get somebody to build a prison in the... I mean, I've been doing these debates for about 20 years now. You have worked in that system for a long, long time. In the time we've been talking about it and you've been working in there, they could have probably built 10 of them. But, of course, they just keep getting kicked into the long grass. We can't do it. It's impossible.
The problem, Ian, is if they build it, they can't staff them, mate. Every new prison that they've built since I left the prison service 10 years ago, yet they've struggled to staff. That is another issue. You know, staff are getting younger, more experience. We've talked about this before, and it is an issue. It's almost 50% female staff in male jails.
Yeah.
That's a frontline job. It doesn't work. It's not helpful. There's no discipline. So again, for me, if we can't manage it in this country, let's look elsewhere.
Let's look elsewhere indeed. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to have you on again. Sam Samworth, he's a former prison officer and, of course, host of the Real Porridge podcast. He does, as you probably guessed or felt from listening to that, tell it like it is, no messing around. Paul says, if the prisons are full, surely common sense, you would build new prisons. How can a mastermind like Lammy be the Justice Secretary? It makes more sense to let the patriots who've been jailed out. What's interesting... I hate the word patriots, by the way. Hate it. Patriotic, I love. Patriots as a... It's like my identity. I am a patriot. What do you do for it? I'm a patriot. It just... you know, nails on a blackboard, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I don't disagree with the point that's just been made there by Paul, and that is that there are people in there who... I mean, if you lobbed a brick at a copper's head in a riot, you should be there. Yes, I'd probably keep you there for many more years than the judge would have done. But if you said some stuff on social media... And by the way, it's not a free pass, social media, but I think we know that, don't we now? Most of us know that it's not a free pass. You can't just say anything you want. But people sort of think you can say anything you want. I was reminded of this very point that we're discussing here, of the news element, which, you know, the government are looking to write to social media tech companies to get them to prioritise, if you like, proper news outfits. The BBCs of this world, the Channel 4s, ITVs and all the rest of it. And therefore, you know, ditch some of the scurrilous stuff that is apparently purporting to be journalism. Now, you see, all the stuff I hate, and I talk about this often, I don't want to ban any of it, to be honest. I'd like it to sometimes come with a slight warning that this is someone's opinion, not fact, or this is someone who is habitually a BSer of the highest nature. I mentioned Andrew Bridgen a little earlier. Those kind of people. I don't want to ban any of them. I mean, let them speak, let them... The problem is that these things can develop quite a following. We were talking about, you know, how do you favour the kind of platform for your news? And we were talking about some of the stuff that gets printed. Earlier today, I spotted, and I forgot to save the tweet, but it'll be there for anyone if I if I bothered to do a bit of a dive, I'd find it again. There was a case yesterday where a teenager was found not guilty of the murder of a child. You'd have heard it on our news throughout the course of the day. The teenager was found not guilty of the murder of a child, and consequently, the teenager, because of the age, was not allowed to be named. I looked on Twitter a little earlier, and someone, I think they were in America, actually. I don't even think they were British. I don't know why. They actually, there's a reason, of course, you don't name somebody of that age. Firstly, because of their age, so they're essentially a child. That's a whole different position than being a fully fledged adult. Secondly, there are other people involved. If you name that person, then you're also essentially naming that person's siblings, their parents, all sorts of other issues. I know that can be argued at any stage, but I think with a child, that's why we have different laws. So this bloke asks on social media, oh, this story of the kid that has been found not guilty of murder, does anyone know who it is? And I thought, just even asking that question is a bit weird. I was a bit disturbed by that. But I thought, don't worry, my fellow Brits will line up to explain to this old Yankee Chancellor, sir, we don't do things like that round here. We don't name children. There's a good reason. No, that didn't happen. Loads of people went, hello, mate, yeah, I know who it is. Yeah, he lives round the corner from me. Yeah, I'll tell you who it is. Here's his name, here's his address. Dozens of people, dozens, go, yeah, that'll be old bleep, bleep, bleep. Known for it, yeah, the right toe rag, everyone knows who he is. And I just thought, and then I realised what I've always known, but still disappoints me, that all of those people, I'm thinking surely they know it's wrong. No, they didn't. They really didn't. Some of them would have thought, this kid's got anonymity, almost as some kind of bizarre protection because of his religion or something like that. It wasn't any of that, by the way. But that would be the case. But many of them were they thought they were helping someone out. Yeah, I can help you out here, mate. Yeah, it's little Mickey Smithers. Lives down the road from your Auntie Rose. Mate, that's not the law of the land. Says, no, that's not good, and there's good reasons for it. But that is your social media news headlines. David's in Coventry. What have you got for us, David? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. You posed a question earlier on in your programme.
Yeah.
You were discussing the Henry Novak case, the absolutely dreadful trip-back behaviour of the police.
Correct.
And you posed a question. You said, when did this all start?
Yes.
And the answer is very, very simple. Uncle Tony, in 1997, came to power as our Prime Minister.
Did.
And one of the things that he did relatively early on was he changed entirely the method of recruitment to the police. He brought in a rule that all candidates to be police officers have to have a degree. To that end, he set up the police college. The police college now has almost all of the recruits that apply to be police officers go through its doors. Yeah. They are vetted. And all of the woke people are given a bit of a leg up. And the sort of people that would call your programme and tell the truth don't have a cat in hell's chance
of getting on board,
of becoming a police officer. I joined the fire brigade back in the 70s, and that was just at the end of the vast majority of trainee firemen, that's what they were in those days, coming from the military, ex-military. It was the same for the police.
Yep.
The police, ex-military, had certain innate qualities. Not everyone was perfect, but they were disciplined. They knew how to obey orders. They were normally physically fit, capable of doing their job, capable of looking after themselves if things kicked off a little bit.
Sure.
They were ideal candidates. They had a level of common sense and a level of experience of the world. I would love to know what percentage of police officers today originated from the military. I would guess it's probably around the 1 or 2%, if that.
I would tend to absolutely agree with you. Absolutely spot on. Listen, David, I have to move for time, but brilliant call. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Makes a good point about the kind of College of Policing and the route and part of the issues. Just very briefly, the Met Office have said that Friday, today, provisionally became the UK's hottest June day on record. 36.9 Celsius recorded at Wattisham in Suffolk. That beat yesterday's high temperature, which was 36.7 Celsius in Merrifield in Somerset. And 36.7 will go on to meet 36.9 in the semis, and we'll bring you the next temperature result this time next week. Cannot wait. Back to more of your calls coming next on Talk.
Only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she's going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. So we've just discovered... So there's this... Matt's our tech op today. So there's a little thing... What's it called, Finn, that thing? Oh, yeah. Give your presenter a bit of notice. Like 30 seconds, 40... Finn! Whoever, I don't know. That's the reason I'm sitting here now with a microphone but no earphones on, so I can't hear a thing. Should we go to some calls? This could be interesting, couldn't it? Can't hear anybody. We've got Jennifer. Jennifer is in the Isle of Wight. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, fire away.
It's regarding the general election that you were talking about.
Yes, should we have one? Would you opt for it? Go for it?
I feel very strongly about it. I'll tell you, read what I've written, and then we can discuss it. It's regarding general elections. Why are there no rules to prevent political parties making promises in their manifestos and not honouring them? For the rest of us, doing this would be fraud by false representation. A law should be made saying if each item on their manifesto has not been addressed in 6 months and completed in a year, I've said, but that's open to discussion. Sure. They must resign or be removed.
Well, isn't the argument that you've... I mean, I don't know what the data would show in terms of how many political parties miss their manifesto pledges, you know, to what degree. They would say... The smart money would say, well, hang on a second, as long as they do it in the Parliament, surely they've done it.
Well, I don't agree with that. I just feel that... No, I think that's why people are so reluctant to want to vote, because they think, oh, they're all the same, these parties. They'll say they're going to do this, that and the other, and then they don't have any intention of doing it. It doesn't matter, and they don't get pulled up about it. So if there were rules or a law or something that would make them toe the line, they wouldn't do it, especially now we're getting parties like the Greens that seem to say anything.
Oh, well, they'll all say anything, won't they? I mean, that's the problem, because we rely also, everything that happens is, I don't think social media is completely decisive in terms of, who wins an election. But it does form a mood music around it. It does, it kind of provides this chamber of noise and debate, and at its best, it's brilliant because people can thrash things out, and you'll see people argue that you never thought you would see publicly argue, whether it's a journalist or a politician or just somebody with a view, people that you like, etc. So there's lots to like about it, but there's a lot of noise there, Jennifer, right? There's a lot of noise informing the view. It's very hard to cut through that cacophony of jip and come up with, an opinion based on what you've just heard or seen.
It seems to make it something that I think should be simplified, very complicated.
Yes, it does. It really makes it complicated because you have people, particularly those with large followings, and then I'm not talking about people who are, fully paid up journalists and get, have got good careers, or famous people. If you're a punter, to coin a phrase, and you start a social media site and on Twitter, and you really go for it, and you particularly major on a certain theme, doesn't matter whether you're left-wing or right-wing, this works both ways, you can have hundreds of thousands of followers, and in some cases even millions, without any single qualification for news. Now, that's fine if you're not purporting to offer news rather than opinion, but it changes people's views, right?
Well, it's also a complication that people are going to all... It's just making a big thing out of something that I think is quite obvious. That if you make a manifesto, you should just do them, and there should be a time limit, and you shouldn't be allowed to say you will and not.
Well, indeed. I mean, that would be, all of those things would be absolutely ideal. But, of course, sitting here in the chamber of everybody having an opinion, everyone having the spotlight, everybody having a microphone, it's tricky. Jennifer, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. Lenny says, I believe Labour are acting similar as they did with Mandelson, which is dangerous with someone as genuine as a £9 note. Used to be a 9-bob note, Lenny, didn't it? With our democracy, that is not fit for purpose. The state of the country is enough evidence. But do we have the view, whether it's Lenny or anyone else, the view of the state of this country? I mean, we've said it about every single party that you disagree with forever, right? If you're a Tory and you don't like the left, you say it about, like, bloody Neil Kinnock or Miliband, Gordon Brown, Blair, whoever it happens to be. But we've now added sort of not just booster rockets to it, we've added this new layer of social media which informs the debate. It makes people who already thought they were right and wondered about that really believe they are right. And therefore the passion, you're arguing with an enemy, and you can say anything you like about an enemy. Pol Pot would be your enemy. No one's going to tell you off for insulting Pol Pot. Right? Hitler, Saddam Hussein, you name it, Milosevic, the list goes on. No one's going to tell you off for that. So you fight with impunity. It's absolutely fine. All guns blazing, attack, attack, attack. So our brains have gone a bit crazy on this stuff. But dividing what is opinion and what is news, which is the other part of... I hadn't realised when we started this debate, by the way, about a general election tomorrow, how well it ties in with that other story about social media companies, because it genuinely does, and where we get the information from. I had a discussion on, again, it's very hard to tell who's right and who's wrong on so many things. I had a discussion with a guy... and I very rarely dip my toe into social media. Finn seems to think I do more than I do. But I did look. I think twice this year I've got into a discussion with somebody of when it's been a little bit, not prickly, but just what you might call, basically disagreeable. And it was, it was really rather simple. It was a question this guy raised. and let me just find this. He said, this guy, I won't name him, and it was a discussion on the call to prayer that we discussed yesterday. And he says, I prefer Poland's policy. 0 Islamics, 0 mosques, free to walk our streets, Christmas festivities are worry-free, no halal and freedom of speech. And I said to him, the only problem is none of that's true. To which he said, what makes you say that? Now, I don't even know how to answer that to start with. What makes me say that? What if it's like saying the Eiffel Tower is in Paris and someone going, what makes you say that? Because it is, right? We just know it is. I said, it's just a fact. Feel free to look it up. It won't be hard to find. He said it can't just be a fact without evidence. Otherwise, it's just an opinion. To which I said, in which case, you'll need to do a basic check online to confirm it for yourself. It won't take you long. He said, I sent you Grok's answer, and he said it was true. They are actively seeking ways to ban calls of prayer. To which I replied, my final reply, I said, yes, but you said they banned mosques, halal meat and Islamics. None of this is true. It would be one of the biggest stories on the planet if an EU country had done such a thing. And that was how the conversation went. Now, pretty harmless stuff. He was just completely misinformed about something. He'd obviously read it somewhere, heard it somewhere and thought, there must be some truth in that. I'll put it on social media. That is fine. Me and him had a measured back and forth on one issue. Nobody got angry. Nobody insulted anybody. Nobody swore. But he got that information from somewhere, and there'll be an account somewhere that has probably got 32 million followers who's putting that kind of stuff out on the hour, on the minute. And again, left wing, right wing, doesn't matter. Who do you believe? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This from Steve, who says, one issue that drives the rapid change of PMs is that none of them have a plan that they can explain that the electorate believes. They do something without disclosing consequences, timelines and contingencies. For example, we've launched breakfast clubs. That will raise X million children out of poverty. How? What the heck does a child getting breakfast do to change the state of poverty? If anyone can show empirical evidence that this is the case, I may not poo-poo the notion, but there is no common sense in this tactic. Steve, you're absolutely bang on. You put it brilliantly. There is no common sense. Bridget Phillipson the other day, who was accused by Kemi Badenoch of being what was the class warrior, a sadistic, horrible class warrior, yet again repeated the lie, repeated by many governments, we've taken this amount of kids out of poverty. Taking your financial position momentarily across a man-made line designed by somebody in the civil service does not take you out of, doesn't fundamentally take you out of poverty. So the line of being in poverty is, you know, you earn 30 quid a week, but if you earn £30.50, you're not in poverty. So you give somebody 50p. Could you realistically say, you're no longer in poverty? You know, there's a perpetualness, is it perpetualness or perpetuality about poverty? You know, it's a conclusion you could only draw over a slightly longer period of time. They go, well, if they've got 50p extra a week and a free breakfast for the kids, they're no longer in poverty. It's that kind of nonsense. Steve, great point. Thank you. Let's go back to that discussion then of Labour publishing plans to force tech giants to boost what it calls trusted news sources. Critics warning it is biased by design and raises serious questions about who gets to decide what is trustworthy. I think that's such a fundamental point, isn't it? Who gets to decide? Let's speak with Dominic Frisby, the author, comedian and commentator. Dominic, always good to have you on with us. You see, I understand, we all know there's a lot of tosh on social media. We know there's a whole shed load of echo chambers. We know there's right-wing nut jobs, left-wing nut jobs. The noise over there, it's amphitheatre-like. And that's why mostly we love it. It's infuriating sometimes, but it's an interesting bit of Wild West to experience. However, the idea, and I also know that many people aren't, you know, they're not necessarily news voices, they're opinion speakers, etc. But the idea that the government decide, well, tech giants via the nudge from the government decide who we need to be listening to is kind of several leaps beyond anything I thought even this government might come up with. Is that fair?
I think it's a very worrying development indeed, Ian. And, you know, on so many different levels, it's worrying. Yes, the internet is full of fake news, but studies repeatedly show that people are very good at separating truth from fact. And I just think citizen journalism has been a tremendous source of truth over the last however many years, 10 years or whatever. And, you know, every citizen journalist, we're all armed with phones now, and that's literally all you need to become a news broadcaster. And without citizen journalism, for example, we wouldn't have learned the truth of the rape gangs. And that was the story that, you know, over many years, the BBC had tried to bury. And in addition to that, you know, there was the Trump doctoring the Trump speech last year. I mean, that's not just a mistake. That is deliberate false information.
I mean, that's in another league, isn't it, of misinformation?
Yeah, and when the BBC is doctoring news stories, and we all know that the BBC has a left-wing bias, and so it's just plainly what I think this boils down to is, I mean, so let's park that one thought. Citizen journalism is a better source of truth than state media. Full stop, as far as I'm concerned. And the general public are, over time, very good at separating truth from fact. And in fact, you know, if you go on Twitter or whatever, it's very self-policing. Because if somebody posts something that's fake, everyone writes underneath, it's fake. And over time, you develop the people that you follow and you go, this guy's reliable and this guy's unreliable.
You see, I agree. I was going to say, Dominic, I agree with some of that. I think the idea that if you get somebody who can break a story, there was something else. I think it was in the States. Do you remember there was the story, Dominic? So it didn't affect us here, but it was the local authority or the state that had been handing out bucket loads of cash to a charity that simply didn't exist over many
Somalian charities in I want to say Minnesota.
That sounds about right. So it was and there was a guy, a young journalist, who, you know, went out there and sort of looked at this. He'd already heard a rumble somewhere that there was something skew-if, and he looked into it. I thought that was brilliant. And, you know, somebody said to me afterwards that, you know, do you know how many press releases over the years, CNN and the like, have received on this from people telling them there was a problem? Not once did a journalist set foot in the postcode, let alone examine the story. So we get it. The other side of that, unfortunately, walking around a migrant hotel with an iPhone, filming a pool table and an egg sandwich. I'm a bit done with that one, Dominic, because everyone's flipping done it, and I'm not gaining anything from it. So,
well, you don't have to watch it.
No, I don't, and that's why I don't want to ban it. I've always said I don't want to ban it. I'll judge it my way. Someone else can judge it their way. But I like the idea people can go out and do it, and the idea that a government is going to decide is disturbing.
I couldn't agree more. And just from the point of view of the ordinary person, there are loads of people who want to be journalists, but there are only so many jobs at the BBC. There's only so many jobs at Talk. There's only so many jobs in the Daily Telegraph or whatever. There just aren't enough jobs for everyone. Yeah. But the beauty of the democratization of media is that everyone can go out and be a journalist, whether you work for a big publication or not. And in fact, there's a lot of citizen journalists who've gone to build up big followings and very good publications, excellent sources of news. And what's more, let's just say, there's a bomb goes off in my house right now, and it's it's the Russian whatever. I'm going to be the best person to report on the bomb, assuming I survive the explosion. I'm right here on the scene with my phone. Yeah. It's going to take the BBC half an hour or something to get here. So if you want right on the spot news, the Citizen is the best source of it. So that's one thing. But what I would add to that is what governments hate, and particularly if they are of an authoritarian nature, is the fact that they have lost control of the narrative. And that's what this is about. The BBC, they can control. The big tech companies, we saw during COVID, they will impose censorship if lent on by the government. And we have Elon Musk and the free speech that is Twitter or X to thank so much, because Twitter has become a form of free speech. It's infected everywhere else, and so Facebook's got more free speech, and YouTube has, and so on. But what it also means is that the state has lost control of the narrative. Now, when you look specifically at Keir Starmer, who one assumes is behind all of this, every time he posts something on Twitter, written by ChatGPT, yes, what is so beautiful is the replies that come underneath. In fact, the replies that Sadiq Khan has blocked replies because he can't. He
does that a lot, doesn't he?
But the Keir Starmer's written, and the replies are hilarious, but they're also truthful. And if Keir Starmer read his own replies, and presumably he does, it must absolutely crush him, and he will hate it. And so I bet you, as much as anything, he's doing this as a means to, he hates these insurrectionalist people who don't agree with his worldview, and they're undermining it. And, without the free speech that is across social media, it's a way to hold our leaders to account, and they don't like to be held to account, particularly when they're faced with a difficult decision, a bipolar decision such as Palestine and Israel. It's a bipolar thing. Which team are you on? And most governments, they'll try and do the Tony Blair third way. Yeah. Well, you can't anymore. That's the nature of the internet, and they've lost control of the narrative.
Yeah, I agree, and I concede, because as much as some of the stuff it might infuriate me, as I said, Dominic, I don't want to ban this stuff. I do wonder how is there does it even matter? Is there a way of working out what that whole thing of what is true, what isn't quite true? What is should journalism, for example, when there's an anonymity order on somebody, you will naturally get, within half a second, everybody or a load of people naming the person. Now, I can remember this happening as far back as Baby P, when the people responsible for the death of Baby P had anonymity initially because there was going to be a future case, and that case could collapse because they could never get a fair trial if they were, hey, here's the killers of Baby P. There was no way that anyone was going to, on a jury, was going to say, yeah, let's impartially make judgment on this. But, of course, on social media, people just started naming them. Now, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the law of the land, if I named those people, I could go to jail. I'd probably potentially be fired. The station would definitely be fined a lot of money for it. I might be dragged into a courtroom by a judge. But if Bob in Arbroath said, oh, yeah, Charlie Smithers, it's Charlie Smithers that did it. Now, what do we do with that, Dominic? Do we just let that go? Do we police it?
No.
What do we do?
I completely agree. It's a problem. and the state needs to adapt to the new technologies available at the time and accept the fact that this is going to happen, and it needs to improve its legal processes and adapt to the new situation, rather than try and impose an old situation where the technology is completely different. It's all part of this controlling the narrative. Well, these anonymity orders, you can't control them now because we have total free speech. You're going to have to update your processes. I'm sorry. That's the answer.
Yeah, no, again, and I love the opinion stuff, and I think, but there are times when you want to make sure you're watching. You know, I see somebody once in a while send me a link to something, say, have you not seen this, Collins? And I'll look at it and I'll think, yeah, wow, that's brilliant. But, you know, and they want to know why I'm not reporting on it or talking about it. And I'll say, well, it's not actually true. It's just somebody's opinion on something. And it's a brilliant opinion. It's also one I happen to agree with. But I'm not about to sort of claim it as a news story because it's opinion-based. And I might cite that opinion as an example of the range of opinions on a particular story. So it's that confusion. But you sense then, Dominic, this stuff ultimately polices itself.
Yes. And I think, you know, the truth will eventually out. And it's, you know, you know me, I'm very much a libertarian and anarchist in my philosophy and my outlook. By the way, the word you were looking for was perpetuity.
Perpetuity, of course it was. Where did I went to? I went to what did I say? I had two examples, both of which were wrong. Perpetualness, perpetuity. That was exactly the word.
I'm
fake news.
I'm a great believer in what Cooperthwaite, who was the financial controller of Hong Kong, used to call the aggregation of multiple decisions, and results in a better outcome than the decision of one bureaucrat sitting in an office somewhere. And I'm a big believer in the aggregation. And sure, there are going to be fake news stories all the time, but we will get better at policing them, self-policing them, and the outcome, which is ultimately what we all want, is the truth.
Sure.
And then you have to go, well, you know, the entire history of humankind is a history of people trying to cleave to the truth. And the truth, you know, you never quite get there, but it's what art is, it's what science is. We're all trying to get the truth. And do you ever get there? Who knows? But I can promise you that multiple individuals operating on their own have got a better chance of arriving at a better truth than a state broadcaster does. 100%.
Let's just finally talk about an area. I mean, this could be fake news. There's a lot of weather stuff going on, Dominic. I've just got to run this by you because you're a Brit and we like talking about the weather. We know that, you know, Ed Miliband is looking after us all with his little net zero empire. Without Ed, frankly, I think we'd be dead already. So it's just worth always remembering whenever we talk about the weather.
This is a perfect example, Ian, of why the government hates free speech, because every single argument that he's put forward under the guise of science has been completely undermined online. And so he just looks like a fool. And that's where they don't like it.
Yeah. And making Ed Miliband look like a fool is always quite good. I mean, it's kind of built into being Ed Miliband anyway, so when a few more layers are added to it. But I was going to mention this, 37 Celsius in Santon Downham in West Suffolk. Do you know Santon Downham, Dominic?
No, I've never been there.
Have you ever gigged over there at Santon Downham?
No, I haven't. I have gigged in Suffolk.
Yeah.
But I'm pro-sunshine, Ian.
I'm pro-sunshine. 37 degrees there today. It's a June record. Hooray! So there you go. We can all celebrate.
Proves everything.
It does. Dominic, great to see you as ever. Dominic Frisby, the author, comedian, commentator. Check out Dominic's new books and where he is appearing. He's a top bloke. Always love his take on things. 0344 499 1000. We've got the voice of doom on the way. Oh, yes. Day 8. We've now frightened Matt, our tech op today, going, voice of doom, no one told me about this, sunshine. What you doing to me, Collins? Day 8, voice of doom, the mystery voice, coming next on Talk.
Only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she is going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. So, Voice of Doom, day... What did we say it was? Day 8. I said day 8, and they ripped into me out there going, what are you talking about, loser? It's not day 8, it's day 7. It's day 8. Mystery voice. Could be left-wing, could be right-wing, could be dead or alive. One simple question for you. Who is this?
Any of the noble aspirations.
Let's hear that again.
Any of the noble aspirations.
And again.
Any of the noble aspirations.
If you think you know, very simply, 87222. It's the only way you can have a crack at this. No prizes or anything, by the way. Bit of kudos attached, of course. 87222 if you know who this is.
Any of the noble aspirations.
And we'll tell you after the news at 3 if we get a correct answer. Back to your calls, comments. Alan in North Yorkshire. How you doing, Alan?
Mate, it's old boy here.
Oh, yeah, how's life? All right, Al?
Could be better.
OK, mate. Well, it's lovely to have you on again.
We don't want to talk about that, though. Anyway,
right.
Listen, I've got several things to say. First of all, so Isaac Newton, he was no mug, was he? That for every action, his third law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And you can apply that to life every day of your life. If you do something stupid, right, you're going to face a consequence. And the thing is, you were talking about kids earlier and they're underaged and, you know, we can't name them, blah, blah, blah. I would estimate, and this is just a guess, I don't know, I would guess the vast majority of the criminal fraternity come from the lower... So it sounds like I'm being snotty. I come from a council house, by the way, but from dull bludgers and people that have dishonesty inherent in their DNA.
Yes.
And they're gonna end up... You know, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, does it?
That's generally true.
And then again, what else can I say? Oh, yeah, Mr. Frisbee was saying about the telephone. You guys spend your entire lives on the telephone. You're missing out on life, mate. There's so much out there. There's so much to see, so much beauty, so much of everything. And all of these kids, you see them walking down the street every day.
And they are just engaged in a telephone. I know it sounds a bit old-fashioned when you say, you know, all the kids today with their technology, but there is something, this is different level now. What do you think about news, Alan, and news being delivered not by qualified journalists, but by people who've got a phone?
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of... I'm torn a little bit. Certainly, as far as the BBC is concerned, we can forget them. There's no possibility. CNN is the same. When I lived in Greece, we used to... The only English broadcast programme before I learned to speak Greek was CNN. And then once we learned to speak Greek, we could watch the national news and that.
Gotcha.
And whereas there's corruption everywhere, the difference is in other countries, if you are caught in a corrupt situation, your bones, mate, they bounce, I promise you. But I think that Mr. Frisbee had a reasonable point on people being closer to the action. You know, well, what's that phrase about getting out of bed, tying your shoes? The bad news is halfway around the world.
Before the truth has put its boots on. Yeah, that's or lies, or whatever the story, whatever way you want to use it. Listen, Alan, I've got to run, mate. But you've forever, as ever, been brilliant. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much, Alan in North Yorkshire. When it comes to breaking news, I've said this God knows how many times. Social media is your best friend, because you will see stuff break on social media. As Dominic Frisbee said, something that's happened in your locality. You know, if your back garden blows up because the Russians have landed whatever the Russian equivalent of a Chinook is in the local park, and in they've come, then you're the best person that's going to film that, all right? No one is ever going to beat that. That's true. But once that's happened, that's when that's when the Wild West bit kicks in. Because after about 10 minutes, people start speculating. You know who that is, don't you? Yeah, Chinese. What? No, it's the Russians. That'd be a Chinese. I think it's the French. And away it goes into a sort of Python-esque sketch. So the original story, brilliant, bang on, top job. After that, anything goes. Right, would you like a reminder of the voice of doom? Remember, this is the mystery voice, if you know who this is.
Any of the noble aspirations.
87222, if you can answer that. And if we get a correct answer, we will tell you in the next hour. Lots still to get through. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
What have we got going on? Quite a bit, as it turns out. Did you know over half of Brits now support a law which would force a general election whenever a governing party changes its leader mid-term? We've seen it happen time and time again. We're about to see it happen again, as pressure mounts on Labour, of course, to give the public a say following Starmer's resignation and Burnham's coronation in waiting, because it absolutely is that. And it's a bit... Whatever our system says, and this is what the system is, it's a bit odd, isn't it? Particularly this one, where the man wasn't even an MP until a few days ago. Also this afternoon, killers, rapists, sex offenders set to be among 6,000 criminals released early from September as Justice Secretary David Lammy implements changes allowing serious offenders to walk free halfway through their sentences in a desperate bid to stop Britain's prisons running out of space. We'll have more on that too. And the mental health benefit claimants are being coached by AI chatbots on how to maximise their PIP payments. There's even a tool. They've got a special kind of tool-friendly, a friendly tool which is there to give you kind of really nice and cosy advice. It's got a name. It's called Pippin the PIP Benefit Support Worker. It guides users on how to claim up to £10,000 of other people's money a year. What's not to like? 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. Dan in Kent says if political parties knew that changing leader will trigger a general election, MPs and governments might be more on the same page, rather than all this backstabbing, which is only bad for the country. Steve in Bromgrove says the reason the country is ungovernable is because those who govern are so obviously not doing the best for the country. Social media has just opened up this view to more people. And I suppose the other thing, and I don't know whether to say in fairness to politicians or serves them right, but one of the two, but it is a kind of... We judge in a far harsher way than we ever did. That's the point, isn't it? So any decision an MP or a politician makes is immediately open to scrutiny, discussion, and then you get onslaught, offence, threats, depending on what the policy is. So it's not straightforward. It's not like, oh, with respect, sir, I disagree with you. It's not that. It's like, you should die, you piece of scum. It's that. It's that, right? 0344 499 1000. Now, Donald Trump has weighed in on this issue of the leadership race and his verdict on Andy Burnham. Not really that flattering, frankly. We did talk about this a little bit yesterday, but it's worth having another listen to this.
Know about who?
The new incoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham.
I don't know anything. I see that he was, I guess, the mayor of a town. I hear he's extremely liberal. Extremely. So that means he probably won't open up the North Sea. You know, I gave Keir Starmer some pretty good advice. I said, open up the North Sea. Go to Aberdeen, which was the hottest city in the whole continent. It was the oil city. It was the oil of Europe, and they closed everything. It was terrible. I saw it before my eyes, and I couldn't believe it. The North Sea is loaded. I have had every oil company come to see me. Sir, could you give us access to the UK? We would do anything to drill in the North Sea. And they haven't even found what's there. The amazing thing is they buy their oil from Norway, which gets the oil from the North Sea. Think of it. And they pay a big premium. Norway's got now $2 trillion in the bank, and UK is dying.
Donald Trump talking on well, firstly, Andy Burnham, but secondly, our extraordinary position on going nowhere near the North Sea, despite the fact there's clearly oil there, because we used to drill for it and then stopped. Norway still do. Let's get to work with Greg Swenson. Greg is, of course, chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Always good to see you, Greg. Just a point that's not that relevant, really, to the grander scale of these stories, but do you think Mr. Trump, the president, deliberately didn't name-check Manchester? Because it's not like a town or a city that people have never heard of.
Yeah, he might have done that as just another way to kind of make a dig at Andy Burnham. So that wouldn't surprise me. But if Beth Turner hadn't asked that question in the White House, I don't think he would have even mentioned or thought about it very.
Indeed. And it did give him a chance to kind of launch a theme that he's been on before, and I happen to think the guy is right on this. And that is, well, there's two things. I mean, immigration, and he wrote that, didn't he, on an earlier tweet, but just before Starmer resigned. Immigration and oil, two things that Mr. Starmer failed spectacularly on, and I get the impression the president thinks that Mr. Burnham may well walk the same path as his predecessor on these two things.
Yeah, I think he's almost making a challenge, you know, prove me wrong kind of thing. Yeah. So maybe Andy Burnham will do it. I mean, he seems to be someone that's more connected to the, you know, the working class. He's from the North. You know, he's seen what, you know, the lack of energy or adequate energy can do to industry. And so, you know, he's not the lanyard class guy like the current government that, you know, they all North London and they all went to Oxford or Cambridge, and they don't really get it, right? And I think, you know, there might be a potential in Andy Burnham to actually liberate the energy sector. Who knows? Yeah, well, that would be something, wouldn't it? And of course, there's this sort of unknown. Well, we know the question. We're not sure of the answer yet. You know, is Mr. Burnham likely to go sort of more Jeremy Corbyn or more Tony Blair? And he's sort of, I would say, on balance at the moment, he's slightly played more to the left gallery. But one does wonder whether that's tactical. Once in the big job, because he's going to get the big job, does he kind of unveil things a little more? Goes a little bit more Blairite, becomes a great friend of Donald Trump. They go sailing together, they play cards together, they sip cocktails together, although neither of them drink, but you take the point. It could be that. Do America care what that relationship looks like? I think we do. You know, it's not, look, you know, the UK, in spite of the complete, you know, decline and atrophy, it's still a G7 economy. It's still our closest ally in terms of defense and security and intelligence sharing. So, you know, that's not going away. The special relationship might have hit a speed bump, but it's definitely not going away. I think it's important to the U.S. Of course, it's probably more important for the UK, just given the scale of the two countries. But look, you know, the UK was energy independent only 20 years ago. And you know, and I know the president keeps talking about oil, and he should, because he's right. He's a common sense guy. It's just so absurd that we're buying oil from Norway, and they're drilling it right up, you know, in the same place where we could be drilling it. And but also there's natural gas under the ground in the UK, and that's something that, you know, could really liberate the private sector in general, not just the energy sector. So, you know, but as long as they don't do that, they're still going to pay 4 times as much for energy as we pay in the US. Yeah, and that seems to be, I don't know, a lot of these left guys, Greg, as you know, the sort of Miliband's and the band of merry men that exist around Miliband, you know, these are people that genuinely think they're saving the planet. And it's not just you know, back when we were kids, it was about saving some polar bears and stuff, and now it's the entire planet. They've gone for everything. It's like, there's no messing around here. We're all going to die. We're going to be, when I was a kid, I was told that, you know, Dover would be 20 feet underwater by now. Strangely, that didn't happen. All of that stuff. But these people dine out on that. So when you start talking about fracking and drilling, they they discombobulate. They melt almost on the spot, these guys. It's hysterical. And look, you know, who pays for that? It's the working class, it's small business, you know, and they don't care about that. It's not, those people are not in the same circle up in Islington, you know. So it's really tragic what the UK has done to itself, you know, by being so hostile to energy. And look, the demand is not going away. They're still going to, you know, okay, keep paying 4 times as much for energy as we pay. And they're paying 40% more than the Germans pay. And those, you know, they were the original climate lunatics. Yeah. In terms of Mr. Trump, just a final point on that special relationship, because we know that obviously he's got connections to this country and through his mother. We know he's got businesses in this country through his golf and other areas as well. We know that he's had a great relationship with the late Queen and a really good start to his relationship with the King. So he's got, you know, probably more than any other leader I could think of anywhere in the world. He has very obvious intrinsic bonds and connections with this country. He'd like it, wouldn't he? If we could rebuild
a relationship with the States in a way, and he's not going to get, no one's going to get everything right, and Trump will soon point that out when you don't. But ultimately, would the American president like to see something of the days of, I mean, Thatcher, Reagan, Blair, Bush, that kind of territory?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. It's not likely given the political differences, you know, until the government, you know, changes, but Trump will be out of office by the time the general election here. But that doesn't mean we can't still have a better relationship. And I think if someone would take a page or two out of the Trump playbook, you know, starting with the energy sector, but it could be free speech, it could be, you know, treating your veterans better, you know, school choice is a big issue here in the U.S. and you know, the Labor government's doing their best to crush private schools. So, you know, there's a number of issues, you know, starting with free speech that I think, you know, could have some appeal to the president, and he'd be happy to lend the playbook to the UK.
Greg, always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Greg Swenson, he's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Thank you to him. This in from Merv about should there be a general election. I was said at the very beginning of the show that I wasn't really in favour of it. Never have been. But the more I've thought about it, and I'm looking at the results of that Ipsos poll that say half of Brits support the idea, the Andy Burnham thing has kind of got a new resonance to the question, because he's not or wasn't even an MP. And that's really been the game changer, and it's slightly changed my mind. And Merv says, well done for a mind change, by the way. I think it is fairly normal to not necessarily have a general election, but Burnham wasn't even an MP. There it is. This is hoodwinking the electorate. What I have to say is Burnham must expect the criticism that he has zero mandate. If he puts one toe outside of what was stated, which was nothing, he could rightly be called useless. That's spot on. Again, their argument is, well, we're a party, you're voting for a party, doesn't matter whether it's being led by him or Dodgepop McDougal down the road. That makes no odds. But it kind of does, doesn't it? Peter's in Oxfordshire on this question. Peter, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Good to speak again. Part of the problem here is that, of course, these things are governed by constitutional conventions, and we don't have a written constitution. So the question is, the rules are fairly flexible in that sense. Obviously, I think if a Prime Minister were, for example, to die, if he were to be killed in a road accident or to become ill, I don't think that should trigger a general election, because the party should be able to continue with the mandate that it has. On the other hand, the situations that we've seen recently are where leaders of political parties have been deposed. Tories are particularly good at this, the 1922 committee. Mm-hmm. In those circumstances, there should be a rule, and I think the rule should be something along the lines that if you depose your leader, and that indicates on the face of it that there is some split in the major party, that there is some major problem, then there must be a general election within, say, 6 months. That is, you get a new leader, and that new leader must then go to the country to re-seek the mandate, which you've lost because you've deposed your current leader. I think if you were to do something like that, I think that would meet both points. It would mean that ultimately the people would have a say, whereas under the current position, the parties can more or less do what they like.
And it doesn't. It's sort of
an election when he feels like it.
Indeed. And this, would you agree then, Peter, that you know this has happened obviously with successive prime ministers, with Johnson, with Brown, with Truss, and others. Does this Burnham thing have a different feel to it because of his the fact that he wasn't an MP and the way they facilitated his journey back to Westminster? Does it feel different from those other stories?
I think it's simply accentuated the point.
Good point.
That has been brewing in our minds on all the last occasions.
Yeah.
You know, when Johnson was removed and replaced by Truss, when Truss was removed and replaced by Sunak, and so on. And I think people have realised that the situation has got out of hand. The fact that Burnham is not an MP only really stresses the point.
Yeah.
because he's coming from it from a different position. He's got no mandate at all.
Yep.
So he's coming. He said at his count, I'm going to change things. Assuming that he was going to be Prime Minister. I mean, he's taken that for granted, so to speak. I am here to change things. Well, if you're here to change things, then you need a refreshed mandate from the people.
And that is fair. Listen, Peter, thank you very much indeed for that. Peter in Oxfordshire. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Cole says, this is to me on social media, there are many news channels that do not get the prominence of some, but social media is expanding in that respect. There are news channels, there's news individuals, but when my fear is this, okay, and it's not that I part company with what Dominic Frisby said, because I agree with what he said and I don't want to ban anything. I do want to distinguish between journalism and opinion, and I do want journalistic standards to be upheld. I forgot to tell Finn this actually recently. I saw a report. It was, the whole kind of the case of the guys that were in court who'd set fire to a house that Starmer used to own, or a car Starmer used to own, and a house that Starmer still part-owned, or something like that. And this whole story went out about, they were rent boys, Ukrainian rent boys. None of it was true, by the way, and anyone who bothered to dig a little bit would have known it was true. But I don't think I've ever seen anything stick quite so instantly and terribly, in a way, because it was just a bloody lie. But people, based on their politics, were so hell-bent on wanting to believe it, and still do, by the way. Even me saying this, some people still do. Anyway, somebody posted this video of a young reporter who was outside the court doing a report on it. And the reason they posted it, he worked for a news channel I'd never heard of. It was obviously some sort of internet, online, digital setup. Can't remember what it was. He was a young guy. I think he was possibly a young black guy, and I only say that to sort of slightly identify him. Anyway, so somebody with a very high-profile account said, this is the new face of journalism. And so they did this report. And it cuts to this guy, it's a clip of this guy, and he's explaining what's happened in court. It's like day 1 or 2 of this case, so it goes back a few weeks. And the guy, he's a little bit clunky, but I thought, man, this guy's great, because he is new. He's about 20, and he's got all the info there, and he's not having to read it from notes, and he looks, a bit more original and not so... I can see how that could be the digestible form of journalism. And he does this report, it lasts about a minute, and I thought, this guy's good. And right at the very end, he said, and the court case continues, and maybe we'll get to the bottom of what happened with these boys. And I thought, why did you do that? He suddenly just laughed at the end of his own news, did a brilliantly impartial news piece, and then just laughed and kind of joined in with the, oh, yes, we know what they were up to. And it was that. The comments underneath said, mate, you've absolutely smashed it. You're brilliant. It's like, no, he's just given his opinion on a court case. He's utterly obliterated all of his credentials and could have been good. Now, you could say that's a bit of naivety and experience, and maybe he worked for an outfit that do that kind of stuff. But is that how you'd want your journalism? See, that's how I want my opinion. I want opinion like that. I want it to be a bit funny sometimes, a bit risky most of the time, a bit thought-provoking a lot of the time too. But I want my news to be impartial and true. OK, I can sit here banging on about all sorts. Kevin O'Sullivan, Alex Phillips, Julia, Jeremy. All of us can sit here having opinions. And many of them chime, some differ. There are nuances. But the news at the top of the hour, our newsreaders don't have opinions, and that's the thing. They read the news as the news is. They research the news, look into the news, get the relevant clips. So it's all of that. And I'd hate to see it go down that path where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because it really does. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she is going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to your calls and comments. This one comes in from Julian, who says, it's irrelevant whether we hold a referendum or not because it becomes a cosmetic exercise. Referendum or an election, maybe a similar thing. Anyway, recent history proves what a manifesto is nothing more than a sales brochure. What you actually get bears no resemblance. Well, I think a lot of people's, a lot of political parties would say, I'll walk you through our manifesto, and you will see that we pretty much got most of it in there. I think the Lib Dems, when they were in coalition, which seems so bizarre looking back on it, when they were in coalition with the Tories, they got something like 80% of their policy. I don't know if it was 80% of the manifesto, because maybe it was. Bearing in mind they were a junior partner in a coalition, to get something like 70-odd% of your ideas into government was utterly extraordinary. I mean, they got annihilated at the next election in 2015, didn't they? Made a bit of a sort of SNP-type comeback, but extraordinary. But they did well. They were punching so far above their weight. It was extraordinary. People gave Nick Clegg a right on, but Nick Clegg should be given a Nobel Peace Prize for success in politics. Not that I agreed with the guy, but you think about it. He had 50 MPs. He becomes a junior partner in a coalition and gets most of his manifesto into government. That's unbelievable. But he was buried by his own #1 policy, and that was the cancellation of student fees. Something he could do nothing about, by the way. Robert's in Hertfordshire. What do you got for us, Robert? Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. First of all, before I go on to my point, I want to tell you about a curious incident that happened to us yesterday right outside my gate. I live in a leafy lane in a Hertfordshire town.
Yeah.
And the ice cream man usually comes around every day.
Nice.
Well, yeah. And my wife, she said to me yesterday, the ice cream van's surrounded by police. I mean, you're joking.
Really?
So I've gone out there, yeah. So I've gone out there, and apparently, talking to a policeman, he was found dead on the floor of his ice cream van, the ice cream man, and his head was all covered in ice cream, raspberry juice, and hundreds of thousands. Anyway, the police suspect he topped himself.
Stop it!
Oh, come on.
Listen, listen. When I first heard that joke in 1982, I thought it was good, but you know, it stood the test of time, Rob.
I've never heard it. Cracked me out. I've never heard. Anyway,
it's not bad, is it? Go on, fire away. What have you got for us?
On to business. I'm a bit disappointed with you because I think you've got heat stroke. Because earlier on,
yes,
you were speaking mildly favourable about Starmer. Come on, have you got heat stroke?
What did I say? You know, I can't. That's not even possible.
He was agreeing with a guy who said he weren't that bad, and he did try to do it. No, he didn't. He gave away. Listen.
No, I said if you were a Labour supporter, you would have this view of Starmer.
Well, okay, and the other, in answer to your...
You're never going to get me have that view of Starmer.
No,
because we were trying to explore why Labour would want to get rid of Starmer. Now, basically because they think they can't win the next election, but he's probably done most of what they wanted him to do.
And a lot more that, you know, that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a dangerous government, led by a dangerous, weak man who, I mean, he didn't govern. He was, you know, and the same people were pulling the strings, would be pulling the strings with Burnham. In answer to your question of the day, As soon as the Prime Minister resigns, there should be a general election.
Yeah.
I don't think the oppositions are ready for a general election, to be honest with you.
No, they would. I mean, they'd have, 6 weeks if one was called tomorrow. That could be... Wow, you're really livening it up on this, Robert, because that could be the strong deal for Burnham, right?
Yes, I think it's the best chance he's got. However, I really don't think that Nigel did his best at the by-election there. Listen, the candidate was a nice guy, but they should have gone a big gun. You know, they should have. I think they thought it was a done deal. And
well, yeah, I mean, they should have. What was his name? The last guy they put in, name escapes me. Reform's last candidate in the previous by-election. His name, Finn, was Matt.
He's on News.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, him, Matt. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But yeah, I would have thought they might have put him into that seat.
Well, the thing is as well, I'm annoyed at the right parties because Ben Habib.
Good win, Robert.
If we all stuck together, you've got three main right-wing parties there.
Gloss over that.
If they stuck together, but they're all narcissists.
Good win. Yes.
That's the trouble. I feel I'm a member of Reform, but I only joined it after the last election to cheer myself up. But I'm not. I've always. I don't trust him.
Well, if they. I mean, do we trust any politician? There's always that question. If Andy Burnham called an election, on the 15th or 17th of July for 6 weeks' time, he would have a good chance of winning it with a very reduced majority. But he would have a good chance of winning.
Not if I was running Question Time, because I'd just ask him, what did you do when you was mayor about the grooming gang?
But it wouldn't be Question Time, would it?
No, but if I give me a chance to speak to him, and I'll show him up for what he is.
He's got an answer to that, of course. He would say that he initiated and supported, two inquiries. Local inquiries. But listen, without getting into the detail of that, the general consensus of a general election, Robert, is that 50% of the country want one.
Yeah, and my candidate would have been to go up against Maggie Oliver. I'll tell you that now.
Okay.
I would have stuck. Mate, I don't know where her political bias is, but I would have tried to recruit her. You know, she would have been. And forget about the Tories. They've only got Kemi, and that's it. I mean,
they're a bit light on kind of beefy material, aren't they, in that respect? Listen, Robert, I've got to run, but thank you for that. Robert in Hertfordshire. Noah Hoffman, top journalist over there at The Sun, has got this exclusive. The Green Party, listen to the wording of this, by the way. The Green Party is considering giving all workers who menstruate, and do people still use the word menstruate anyway? You're menstruating? Maybe. Not next week. An additional 36 days paid leave a year. That's like 6 weeks holiday, right? An extra 6 weeks holiday. Under the proposals, businesses will be forced to allow staff to take 3 days off every month during menstruation. Employees would not have to present a doctor's note, and the time off would not be recorded as sickness absence or deducted from annual leave. The plan is laid out in a motion for the Green Party conference, the motion which specifically refers to workers who menstruate rather than women who menstruate. It has been submitted by a male party member. Of course it has. It could become official party policy in October this year. 36 days holiday is another 7 week holiday, isn't it? The equivalent of another 7 weeks holiday based on a 5-day week. I mean, that's an astonishing thing. But they would never going to use the word women, are they? Women. And do we have the word? I don't know any women who use the word menstruate, by the way. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. Fafa says, you have to love Donald Trump. Talks common sense. Will Andy Burnham listen? The trouble is with the kind of Burnham thing is I keep saying there's quite a lot of house points on the left for not just disagreeing with Trump, but, you know, tell it, go on, go out there. Go on, Andy, go out there, tell him like it is. Go on, don't let him get away with nothing. Over there, who does he think he is? The old comb-over king of Capitol Hill. Tell it like Hugh Grant did in that movie. Go on, Andy, go for it. Rip him and you, all of that. They love it. They absolutely love it. They actively want there to be a row with the United States. It's a sort of really wonky, bizarre, anti-intellectual, crazed position that many people on the Labour benches, I would say probably most of them, actually, they love all of that. Now, Labour's new conversion therapy ban means parents could risk jail if they tried to talk their child out of gender treatment, including partaking in puberty blocker trials. Critics are calling for clarity over what the new law will cover, since practices such as electric shock treatment and corrective assault are already illegal. Well, thank God for that. Now, let's speak with Connie Shaw, External Affairs Officer with the Free Speech Union. How are you doing, Connie? Good to see you again.
Good, thanks, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. So, I mean, every time we talk about one of these stories, I just think, we're living in a weird place, aren't we? Just every time we mention this kind of gender spectrum stories and kids being taken into therapy, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you know, parents who clearly want there to be an issue, all of that caper. We're in a curious place. The Labour position on it, what was your view, firstly, on their position on what they want to happen, as distinct for parents and what they want to happen?
Well, for a long time, we've been hearing about, and it's been mentioned in many sort of manifestos and King's speeches, about a trans-inclusive conversion therapy ban. And when people hear the words conversion therapy, they often think of the things that you've just referenced there, like electric shock treatment, things like corrective rape, horrible things which are, of course, already illegal in this country. But when we talk about a trans-inclusive conversion therapy ban, what it really means is, and what has been detailed in this draft bill, which I think is actually a lot worse than anyone was expecting. We've been waiting to get this for a while, and it couldn't be any worse, really. And what it effectively means is, like you've already pointed out, talking could be criminalised, even talking between parents and children if their children are confused about their gender identity or their sexed bodies. And the government will tell you that it won't criminalise this. And in the press release, and government spokespeople are saying that the only criminalisation that will be going on is criminalisation of serious acts of abuse. But when you actually look at the bill, they define conversion therapy as any conduct which causes the individual to believe that they have or do not have a transgender identity, which is interesting because that seems like it could also include therapists who affirm a child's transgender identity, as well as therapists who are gender critical and sex realists who try and help a child feel comfortable in their body as it is. So that's quite interesting. And it seems counterproductive to me.
Yeah.
But then it goes on to define what serious harm and abuse might be. And it says that serious harm to the individual's physical or mental health, or serious alarm or distress to the individual which has substantive effect on their usual day-to-day activities. I mean, that's very broad. And you can think of an example of a child who is absolutely adamant that they have a trans identity and their parents are not willing to go along with it. So a child may well feel extreme distress, and it may affect their day-to-day activities. For example, if their parent doesn't correctly gender them, if their parent misgenders them. And you can imagine a situation where a vindictive child who has been radicalized to believe that their parent is evil for not going along with their gender identity may well report their parents to the police for this, or even the threat of reporting their parents to the police could be enough for their parents to be very worried about talking to their child and trying to help them through the distress that they're feeling.
Indeed. Well, I was thinking that you can imagine a kid telling a teacher, can't you, and then the teacher telling someone else, and then suddenly the police are called. I mean, this is, again, we started off talking about the lunacy of some of these conversations, and here it is. This could happen where a 6-year-old ends up getting their parents hauled into court because their parents dare suggest that their little boy probably isn't a girl. And I think, and the curious thing about all of that, you know, they may be, they may not be. On balance, in all probability, statistics, science, facts, and all of that stuff, Connie, there is a huge chance, a greater than not chance, that their little boy is not actually a little girl. So we could probably say that you'd think you could say that without question, but it's exactly that might get you in handcuffs and taken down the cop shop.
Well, precisely, and also the maximum sentence for this kind of thing is 5 years.
Wow.
Now, just think back to a couple of cases we've seen recently. There was a chap who used to work for the Taliban, entered Britain illegally, went on to kidnap and sexually assault a 7-year-old girl. He received 2.5 years in prison. I mean, this is just one example, and this is why people get two-tier Britain outrage when we see our justice system doing things like this. And now it seems that a parent should be fearful of talking to their child about their biological sex and their, confusion of gender identity, may be fearing 5 years in prison. But also it may seem ridiculous, it just seems so ridiculous that we're talking about, of course, my little boy is not a little girl, but we know that social transitioning for children, they will want, many of these children believe that if they do not receive puberty blockers, that somehow their life will be at risk. We know that doctors had told adults, the parents of these children, would you prefer a dead son or an alive daughter? So it's also about the medical pathways that these children that might want to go down, life-changing surgeries that their parents now might be scared about trying to talk them out of doing these things that we absolutely know have lifelong damaging effects to these children. And so, and also the puberty blocker trial that's now still going ahead. A parent may feel that they cannot talk to their child about whether they whether their child should have these things. So, and it's just so concerning. And the bill also says that this won't apply to medical professionals if they're carrying out their job in a way that is about delivering healthcare. But we already know without this bill, I know for a fact that there are therapists who are terrified of taking on new patients in case the patient that they have acquired knows that they are gender critical. For example, James S's, his organisation of therapists who are sex realists without ideology. There could well be a situation in which a trans activist applies to see one of these therapists and is like an infiltrator to catch out a therapist and then report them to the police. I've spoken to therapists who are worried about this happening, that every time that they take a new patient on, they are very cautious that this could be someone who's pretending and actually just wants to catch them out for being gender critical or not affirming of gender identities. And there have already been bills passed in Australia where this is the case. And that fear exists there. But without this bill, therapists are already worried about this. So this bill is just going to be completely stifling on free speech. We know that when the government says that they're banning something to protect people, it more often than not is not really about safety. It's about cracking down on freedom of speech. And this is just another example.
Absolutely. Just before you go, Connie, I know you've been at the ARC conference this week. We've spoken to many voices from former Prime Ministers to your man Toby Young, of course, from the Free Speech Union, the founder, and various other characters as well. It's an interesting conference. How would you describe it? Because to many people it was new to them. They weren't really aware of what it was all about. But you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of really kind of big names and sometimes not such big names, but significant names in the sphere of things like free speech and openness and discussion and debate and policy from the world of politics, journalism and all sorts of other areas as well. How did you find it?
Well, it was very good. I went last year as well. I think that obviously the heat. I think everyone over the last few days has been struggling with the heat. But obviously, ARC is Jordan Peterson was a co-founder and the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And for me, it's I've always seen it as a conference about people who want to come together to try and save Western civilization, to remind ourselves why it is that the West is so great. And how to try and restore what we have lost. And, you know, the decline of the West that we talk about every day, it's bringing thousands of people together to encourage people to keep going, what we can do to move forward and restore things. And what was really wonderful was that they gave out 1,000 tickets to young leaders for free. It is quite an expensive conference to go to. If you get the chance to go, it can be life-changing. It was for me last year when I met people that I never imagined that I'd be able to meet before, see Douglas Murray speak live, see Iron Hersey Ali speak live, and this year they gave out 1,000 tickets to young leaders for free, young people who are keen to get involved and do what they can, especially when in their generation it's a very hostile environment to talk about these things, that actually Western civilization is a good thing, and that we should continue it rather than allow it to decline. So it was really wonderful to see so many young people there, meeting others who they perhaps may never have met, another young person that they could talk openly with about these kind of things. That was certainly my experience last year and this year as well.
Which is great. Listen, glad you were there, glad you were with us as well today. Connie, thank you as ever. Connie Shaw, External Affairs Officer at the Free Speech Union. Thank you to her. 0344 499 1000. Before we go to a quick pause, we haven't done the Voice of Doom payoff yet, have we? Have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom? Let's just remind you of the voice we played you, well, almost an hour ago.
Any of the noble aspirations.
So all you had to do was tell us who that is. These are some of the guesses. Brigitte Macron. No. Mark Carney, no. Conrad Black, no. Mark Carney again. Walt Whitman, Jerry Springer, Justin Trudeau, Donald Rumsfeld, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Kissinger, Buzz Aldrin, Bob Dole, Jack Kemp, no. Franklin Roosevelt, oh, no. We haven't got a winner. Nobody got it correct. It rolls over to, I was about to say tomorrow, to Monday right here at the home of Common Sense. Stand by for that. Right, now, in case it has escaped your attention, the 2026 World Cup has officially, of course, absolutely officially kicked off. Talk is celebrating the summer of football in absolute style. How do you fancy getting your hands on an absolutely massive £26,000 cash-free? £26,000. You could do a lot with that. Just imagine transferring that into your account. It could be a beauty, whether you clear your bills, book a nice luxury holiday, or just live a little better over the summer, a lot better. It's a life-changing sum of money, of course. If your bank balance could use a serious upgrade, then here's everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
only somebody like Rachel Reeves would take a tax-free savings product and apply a tax on it. So the parting gift of Rachel Reeves is that she is going to come for your ISA now and apply a 22% tax. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Well, we're going to fight this every step of the way. I'm going to hopefully raise it in Parliament later today and try and put as much pressure on her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Paul in Leeds. She says, you increase the minimum wage for 18-year-olds to the same as that of a 24-year-old. Guess what? No one employs them. Similarly, gives 36 extra days holiday for people that menstruate. Guess what? Yes, so absolutely. This is the Green Party in another one of their efforts to just kind of out-bonker themselves with policies, not only using the wrong language to explain people who menstruate. But really? How old are these people? What are you, 12? Man alive. This comes, of course, from Polanski and co. Charlie's in East Sussex. I'm assuming general election detail. Charlie, what have you got for us?
Well, Ian, look, let's be absolutely serious about this.
Yes.
We're not, 100% not going to have a general election when a party changes its leader. Couple of reasons.
Yeah.
The first one is that we don't elect a leader, we elect a party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And the second reason is it's not in the parties or political interests to do that. Because, again, it would be like turkeys voting for Christmas.
Sure.
In my view, the only way you could absolutely do this would be to enshrine a party's manifesto commitments in law. If they break those manifesto commitments, then you could legitimately say, hold on a minute, we did not vote for this. Let's go to the ballot box once again. Yeah, I can't, it's unless we completely change the way we do things, which the political class will not allow us to do,
sure,
then things will not change it.
That's true. The only problem, of course, is putting it in law is that there's going to be some policies where circumstances change so obviously that it's not even the fault of the party. There's a war breaks out or some horrendous flood or something where you can't implement what you wanted to implement. Or there could be circumstances where you absolutely did your best but were unable to achieve 100% of what you wanted.
Right.
I mean, would we then take those parties to court for that? Because that could go on for years, couldn't it?
Well, look, when you're in a court of law, what's one thing they always ask for? It's mitigating circumstances. So that would have to be written into whatever law we would do that would apply to it. So there would always be mitigating circumstances. And from my point, it's absolutely. Oh, hold on 1 second. Got some lunatic calling me on my other phone.
Is your pinball machine just fired up, mate?
No, that was the Captain Scarlet theme tune, by the way.
Go on.
You're old enough to remember it.
Hit the left flipper, mate. You'll win.
Yeah, I do. But But on a serious note, Ian, unless we absolutely fundamentally change the way we do things in the UK, this will never happen. As much as you or I or anybody else or the people in the Ipsos survey want it to happen, it won't happen unless we're all prepared to grasp that nettle.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't really happen I mentioned Australia and Canada and other similar countries where exactly this happens. So we're not alone in this one.
No. The other thing I want to pull you up on, when you spoke about Nick Clegg, she had the Peace Prize. But if you think of it, I'll put a scenario to you.
Yeah.
It's like having a big guy carrying your bag. You know, if you've got him by the short and curlies, he's going to keep carrying that bag, isn't he?
That's true. But considering he was a small party, though, Charlie, and had zero chance of getting into government, he became the Deputy Prime Minister and got Lib Dem policy. I mean, you know, the Lib Dems stuck the handbrake of excess onto the Tories, and the Tories did the same to the Lib Dems. So some people say it was quite a good combination.
Well, in some people's opinion, it might have been. But if you think about it, I mean, the Tories had no option, did they? They had no option. They had to side with a little guy in order to get business done. Yeah. And ultimately, the little guy came out as a winner.
It was utterly bizarre, wasn't it?
It was.
David Cameron, Nick Clegg. Who was that fella that was in Chief Secretary of the Treasury? Danny Alexander. Do you remember him?
Danny Alexander. Yeah, what a complete loon.
Yeah.
But, you know what
they were the kind of four, the sort of Fab Four.
Yeah.
It's utterly bizarre time.
Absolutely mad. But look, anyway, have a lovely weekend.
And you too, Charlie. Take care. Good luck with your phone. Oh, Captain Scarlet, wasn't it? Charlie, thank you very much indeed. Charlie from East Sussex. Captain Scarlet does, believe it or not, slightly predate me, but I was aware of it because it stayed on the TV for years and years after it was made. And I think there's probably some kind of retro channel out there that does that. Gaynor in Nottinghamshire says the Green Party and voters need to have 1 extra day's annual leave each month to go back to school and learn basic biology, like only women can menstruate. And it would be helpful if they knew the difference between a man and a woman as well. Well, it's a fair point as well. And I think they just need to... I don't know what they need to do, because they do provide a lot of material, don't they? I was about to say I need to have a reality check and give their heads a wobble. But actually, in a way, I don't want them to, because I want them to keep coming up with tripe like this so that people like us can just either have a massive laugh at it or a cry, because some of the stuff they come up with is either deeply sinister or just plain bloody stupid. But it's the Green Party. It's kind of what they're meant to do. It does what it says on the tin. Welcome to the Green Party. We do stuff that most people would believe is bonkers. Kevin O'Sullivan is here. Kev. Hey, you're right.
Oh, no, I'm hot. I've just got off the Jubilee line. I think it's about 63 degrees down there, and that's centigrade, you know. Unbelievable. I'll talk about the royal family.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all proud of the royals. Lots of Brits are. Most people love the royals. But we just spent £369 million renovating a palace they're not even going to live in.